What's up? How are we all doing? How's everyone doing today? Hope we're all right. Been a pretty good day. Pretty good day, I'd say. Seems like leftoids got what they wanted. We shall see. I'm not doing too bad, Ace. Not doing too bad. Good to see the Tories getting fucking absolutely annihilated across basically everywhere in the country. Doesn't matter where it's the south or whether it's the north, whether it's the east, it's the west. Conservatives got absolutely fucked today. And you love to see it. You love to see it. Absolutely love to see it. And who can blame them who can blame the population for not wanting to vote for the Conservative Party, given the circumstances? Have a look at the actual results themselves. So hopefully this will fit on the screen properly. It just scales. There we go. So I think I lost 1,000, and there's still 8 councils left to declare. So they could have lost like 1,100 councillors by the end of today, which would be very funny. Losing 46 councils, and across the board everywhere. So Labour, Lib Dems, Greens, Independents as well. Reform got a grand total of 2 additional councillors, which I think is very funny to me, given who they are. Glad to see the Yorkshire Party doing well. UKIP with no more councillors. I'm assuming most of them just rather Reform or Tory now. Also glad to see the Residents' Association losing councillors too. Like the NIMBY Party not getting any new seats is good to see. Always glad to see that. And it's worth noting, right? So I know there's a bunch of leftoids here saying that this is not good for Labour. Labour should be doing better than this because they've only slightly increased their vote share, whatever it is. And I think that is jumping the gun a little bit. Local elections are different. There's a thing been going around. There's a BBC projection going around Twitter where they've said, no, we expect Labour to be short of a majority in the next election. I really think that's wishful thinking because these projections are based upon a different voter set, a different kind of turnout. Like, turnout is super fucking low. Even for local elections, turnout is down by 22%. In some 25% in some wards, so we're seeing around about 20% drop in actual participation, which shows you the effect of political disenfranchisement and shows you the effects of voter suppression, which we'll definitely come on to later at some point. And I do think there will still be a Labour government. One thing that was interesting about the Labour support, this is a really interesting piece, interesting stat that was posted up on Twitter. Which was looking at patterns of voting with education, right? In that, in 2019, a lot of people with lots of low graduate areas moved over from Labour to Conservative, and everyone was just like, "Oh, it's because Labour have become the party of the elites or whatever, the metropolitan liberal elite." No, it's just Brexit, right? It was just Brexit. Brexit was the reason why they lost so many votes in 2019. It's obvious that it was Brexit, and now that it is 2017, on the referendum, lots of votes. 2019, second referendum policy, lose a bunch of votes, gain them all back at the local elections this year. I do think that there is a mix between both voter suppression and disenchantment, which has hit turnout. I think it's a combination of both. But I think, yeah, Ash Rand is right in chat, and that it's a good performance by Labour, and people saying that it's bad performance. The only people who are saying that it's a bad performance are actually genuinely people who don't understand the position they're in when these seats were last contested in 2019. When Corbyn was ahead in the polls, Labour were ahead in the polls at that time, and Theresa May was doing horribly, right? And for one thing, Keir Starmer was right speaking to Sophie Ridge, saying that if in a normal way, you'd expect the Conservatives to do better because they were polling really badly in 2019. Obviously, we don't mention the Jam Man and his positive effect on Labour polling at the time, but regardless, it is still a good result for Labour, given how many seats that they've won. And I think when you go into the next election, you have higher turnout. Different people who otherwise wouldn't vote will now start to vote. Local elections tend to skew more right-wing anyway, skew older in the voter demographics who take part. So I actually do think that on my projection, I'd still think we'd see probably 40% vote share for the Labour Party at the next general election, which would translate into a majority government. Now, don't get me wrong, it would be incredibly funny if Labour did manage to somehow be short of an overall majority at the next election, given the circumstances. But I think that's unlikely. There was another set of things that... There was another graph that was going around about issues people cared about during the election. Let me find it. I forget where it was, but anyway, it was showing that nowhere in any of the reasons why people voted in the way that they did was because of people being woke or because they were engaging with the culture war, which shows you just how it's not an effective winning strategy. And quite frankly, the main thing was cost of living, was about the NHS, was about all that kind of stuff, and it just shows that, unironically, it is the economy, stupid. It's always been about the economy. And when you mess that shit up, it's really difficult to fix. And the Conservatives already committed to deficit reduction, so that won't get fixed. So they are going to lose the next election. It is a foregone conclusion as far as I'm concerned at this point. Yeah, I agree, Colin. I think the numerical analysis is definitely very faulty. LK mentioned Boris Johnson 5,000 times. I didn't even watch the BBC. I watched Sky. That's how little I like the BBC right now. I was watching the Sky News coverage. I think you've said this before, but the ideal is Labour one short of majority and the one guy is Jeremy Corbyn, only two short. You want them to have Jeremy Corbyn and Caroline Lucas on board. Or three short, assuming Carla Denyer beats Thang and Debonair in Bristol West, which would be very funny. Which might be on the cards, right? One of the big beneficiaries of these results this year was the Green Party, who have more than doubled their councillors, gained overall control of the council for the first time. The multiple cases, like in this ward in Leicester, this councillor, Patrick Kitterick, got expelled from the Labour Party, so defected to the Greens, and then the Greens swept all three Labour seats in this ward. We have Alan Gibbons, who was kicked out of the Labour Party for being too left-wing and for liking the wrong Facebook pages. He won fucking a massive, gigantic landslide victory in this ward in Liverpool. We see overall Greens up 11% of the vote share, which is one of the highest vote shares I've seen from any election, local or national. Gaining control of Mid Suffolk Council. There was Cal Corkery. Let me find him as well. Who, again, was kicked out of the Labour Party. And beat the Labour candidate just about by about 6-8% of the vote, I believe it was. And they'd even forgotten they'd suspended him because he got a thank you card from Keir Starmer in the email inbox, which I think is very funny. So actually, there's been a really good night for the left more broadly. I think that's really what is super important, is that the left has done well. The Labour Party, like I voted for my local Labour CLP because they are left-wing, genuine socialists. I'm not sure about in York and in Brighton, I believe Greens lost seats to the Labour Party, but if it's good local Labour Party, that's absolutely fine. I'm not too fussed about that. In general, we've just seen a large kind of progressive boom across all counts, really. Have I seen this? Let me have a look. Okay, we'll go through the the local results, and then I might touch on that one, Scribby. I mean, I think that's true, Eric. But unfortunately, you cannot win off a completely fucked economy like the Tories have done. I don't think even the Conservative Party strategist on Sky News last night was saying that they want to focus on Starmer because they believe he's specifically weak, because he is. But I don't think that will translate into a huge, any kind of actual gains when the economy is so fucked and people's living standards are so fucked as well. So I do think it will translate into Starmer winning the next election still. And it just shows how having a strong local party can really help you when you're standing from a progressive perspective. Labour did fine. This is basically the kind of result that I expected going into last night.
Fucking neoliberalism.
Hey, Jim,
no, just laser.
Thank you for the resub, Jim's being much appreciated. People can join in by also subscribing for $3.99. We're all for free with Twitch Prime. Or you can become a YouTube member for 99p, or super chat, or send bits messages if you really, really want to give me more money so that I can do this full time rather than working my shit job that I hate. We don't have to. Interestingly, the number of independents went down. You can see it is interesting watching the red wall just immediately be rebuilt completely, right, in the face of Labour since the fucking Brexit stuff in 2019 they've changed their position on that. To see the red wall just immediately be rebuilt is quite good to see. Let's watch some reactions. So let's see what the notorious JAB has to say.
Regardless of what the other vehicles are doing, the Conservative Party bus has crashed overnight, and it's crashed quite badly. I'd be interesting to see how he copes with it. Is he one of those people who, when actually the back begins to feel the wall, he starts lashing out or behaving petulantly? You know how Johnson carefully cultivated that image of being quite carefree and not caring about much, and I'm such a and then actually, as soon as anybody, and very rarely did anybody do this tragically, as soon as anybody held his feet to the fire at all, he became a really nasty piece of work, telling disgusting lies, of course, about Keir Starmer in the House of Commons, repeating what were essentially internet troll tactics in the House of Commons itself. When you get this notion of what would you call it? I mean, just the bully cornered, if you like. It was very illuminating. I've got no idea how Sunak copes with adversity because we've never really seen him in it. Regardless of what the other vehicles are doing, the Conservative Party bus has crashed overnight, and it's crashed quite badly. I won't over-egg this particular analogy, but the casualty count is going to be about as high as the worst predictions suggested. Maybe not as high as the worst, but in that kind of area. So Rishi Sunak in the driving seat for a disastrous electoral performance. That's a matter of fact. I don't know how many people are going to try to pretend that it's not, or try to turn it into a conversation about, well, I think you'll find that Keir Starmer's Labour Party didn't win every single council seat on every single council.
Don't vote for the CPB in future, Jim Speak. They're transphobic as fuck. And transphobic from the leadership down throughout the entire party too. The CPB are really bad. But obviously they weren't going to win, so it doesn't really make much difference on your end. Whereas at least the Green Party may have a lot of transphobes in the party. The leadership is incredibly pro-trans, despite what the membership are doing. So you can guarantee that there's going to be some pro-trans stuff going on with the Green Party, but the CPB are really fucking shit. Unfortunately. You're right, Iron Mage. Long time no see. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, but I voted for SM. I voted for the Labour Party for my 2 votes because there was no one else was going to win. I didn't know anything about the Green candidate, and my local CLP is very left wing.
Council in the country. Therefore, this is actually a very bad night for them. Actually. But this is a disaster for the Tories. Predicted, expected, but a disaster. Don't get smug if you're keen to see the back of them. Anything can happen in politics. If a week is a long time, what the hell is 18 months? I often think of the Falkland Islands, bizarrely, on mornings like this, because I don't think it's apocryphal to say that Margaret Thatcher's polling, shortly before General Galtieri decided to send troops to the Falkland Islands, Margaret Thatcher's polling was catastrophic. The notion of her winning a second term in Downing Street was vanishingly small. And then, of course, the Falklands War came along and delivered historic public support to the Prime Minister who sent troops to the South Atlantic, quite rightly, and actually displayed whatever you thought about other things that she did remarkable.
Yeah, I've been trying to make sure I gather as much information as possible, get all the results in, be able to see what the kind of the mood is. Like, one thing I think, like Aaron Bastani made this point on Novara Live today, that there's now room for a kind of nascent move from the Green Party to see more of an electoral footing when it comes to the next general election. And I think that's really true, considering that their core voter base aren't usually the most engaged for local elections. To see them engaged to the level that they have been here is incredibly good to see. And I was actually mentioning this on Twitter, actually. Zach Polanski, who's the deputy leader of the Green Party, followed me back on Twitter after saying this on Twitter myself, which was that I think the more the public see of people like Zach Polanski and Carla Denyer, the more they're going to warm to the Green Party. They're really good communicators, they've got charisma, they've got actual, genuinely progressive policies that people are feeling positive towards in the way that they're not with Labour. Like, Keir Starmer is really crap, quite frankly, at getting his message across, and the public are voting for Labour in spite of him rather than because of him, no matter what fucking Maul Payson seems to think people are voting for. So it'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with the Green Party moving forward, if they can turn the success here into a bigger political platform. Now they've got such a great council election. This is where they're going to have to be able to use the media to try and move themselves forward, moving forward. It'll be really interesting to see. It'll be really interesting to see. And also, like, where the culture war stuff is just not winning for the Conservatives. They're going to have to abandon it. They're going to have to look like a normal party again. Suella Braverman's going to have to go from the front bench. They're going to have to stop dealing with fucking people like Lee Anderson as deputy chair, because it's not winning over anybody. It makes them look stupid. PMQs is going to be pretty funny next time. We shall see. What is interesting to see the number of Green gains from the Tories, right? It does show that there are definitely some NIMBYs within the Green ranks, but, it is what it is. Yeah, the sewage stories is really just like the failure of privatisation writ large. Like, not even Chile, not even Pinochet's Chile privatised the water network. That's how dumb of an idea it is.
Qualities of leadership in that context. So you never know what's going to happen. Keir Starmer is currently trying to carry a Ming vase across an ice rink. That's the best way to understand it. You've probably heard that analogy before. I explore it a bit further with Alistair Campbell, who knows quite a lot about this stuff, in next week's Full Disclosure. But that is the tactic they have chosen. We're not going to make massive announcements. We're not going to set off fireworks. That's the choice you've got. Either we set off fireworks, have a big party, try and invite as many people as possible, everybody starts dancing around our maypole, or you take what you've got, which is a very, very damaged opponent, and you carry the Ming vase of victory across an ice rink, hoping that you won't slip over. It may not be the right decision, but it's the decision that is clearly taken. So what should Sunak do now? Here's a really interesting thing. So Rishi Sunak, I read in the Telegraph today, faces pressure from the right wing of the party. Could you imagine that? Rishi Sunak faces pressure from people further to the right of a government that is using racist rhetoric about refugees to cover up their utter failure to govern effectively in every other area of British life.
And that's the issue, right? They have no proper solutions. That's why they'll lose. It's exactly why they're going to lose. It's because they have no real solutions to a problem that is based in the failures of economic austerity. And they are fundamentally obsessed. They follow religiously, it's like scripture, the idea that the budget deficit has to The budget deficit has to be reduced. The national debt, as a proportion of GDP, has to continually go down via austerity politics. They believe this like actual rote scripture, and they cannot deviate it from it at all. And that's where all of the economic problems that we come from today, from privatisation and from lack of investment and from austerity. That's where all of our problems come from. And they cannot admit that they have to reverse that policy prescription to be able to solve this issue. That's why the right's going, no, more Laffer curve, more trickle-down economics, do it even harder, as if that will help anybody. And again, why they're going down to racism? Because they fully cannot properly understand why they failed in the way that they have. So there's no way for them to go. There's literally double down economics. Yeah, that's what it is. I love it, Jim speak. Yeah, they're fucked. They're completely fucked. There's no way the Conservatives can win the next election. Absolutely no way. Like I made this point on Twitter, because that's where my life is spent the vast majority of the time. Which is that essentially COVID and the war in Ukraine are a war economy. Like we've just come out of a war economy where we had to spend huge amounts of deficit spending to be able to keep us going, and to massively increase the national debt, to keep the economy running on fumes, basically, because we had during the wartime we had to ensure that we had plenty of money being funneled into the war effort, and in the COVID we had to make sure we pumped money into furlough to keep people actually being able to live despite having to stay indoors the entire time. It's very similar situations. And what did we do in the post-war period? Is that we deficit spending on massive state-run investment programs, right? We built huge swathes of new council housing. We reinvented the economy by creating the NHS, being the social democratic post-war anti-classical liberal consensus was built, and that gave us the most amount of prosperity this country's ever seen, the much higher average growth than we got during the neoliberal period. And because we grew the economy so much through deficit spending, through Keynesian economics, the national debt as a percentage of GDP actually did go down. Not through austerity economics, not through cutting back spending, but increasing spending by building infrastructure, by unironically levelling up the country. And, both sides of the political spectrum doing David Cameron impressions is going to make things worse. And as the Conservatives do not know any better, they will fail. They will fail miserably. They will absolutely fail miserably, and there's no way back. There's no way back.
Rishi Sunak faces pressure from people further to the right than his current cabinet, which of course contains Suella Braverman, and until relatively recently contained Dominic Raab. What is further to the right than Rishi Sunak? Yeah, that was actually a rhetorical question, but I couldn't come up with any answers either. Government policies that involve lies about the most desperate people on the planet, rendering them illegals rather than humans when they are absolutely not illegal, when the government ministers who were ever asked what law these people are breaking are utterly unable to say so. When they're asked why you're not arresting these people, are utterly unable to say so. And yet even today, having presided over exponential increases in the number of desperate souls crossing the English Channel in dinghies, even today, Rishi Sunak keeps promising to stop the boats. So what does a lurch to the right look like? Bring back the birch? The cat o' nine tails? The death penalty? But what does a lurch to the left look like? And how big a shadow does Brexit cast over everything? It doesn't seem to have played much of a part in votes overnight, but I can tell you this, because it's very interesting. Labour's making its gains in Brexit voting areas, and the Tories are making their biggest losses.
Does that not tell you something about your kind of Brexit betrayal narrative about Jeremy Corbyn in 2019, James? Can you just not put two and two together and realise that people like you who pushed for this ridiculous second referendum policy are literally the reason why we have a Conservative government right now? I mean, I'm glad he's coming to the realisation eventually, but the fact that people like James and the Metropolitan Liberal Elite, or whatever it is, shat on northern Brexit voting constituencies to the point at which the Labour were forced to adopt a second referendum policy that then cost them the red wall. And now he's finally realising why that happened in the way that it did. Someone clip that.
In Brexit voting areas.
In terms of the
No actual critical analysis of that. Hey ho. Funny. Oh, something else. Before we watch the Tories trying to look like they didn't get absolutely hammered at in the election and trying to and coping super hard about it. I don't know if anybody saw this because this is fucking hilarious. It is the most Lib Dem moment I have ever seen in Britain. Like, a Liberal Democrat councillor in northwest England is elected in a councillor in Gloucestershire at the same time. If nothing else is more a Lib Demi thing to happen, this is the most Lib Dem they've ever Lib Demmed. Because it's not because they will literally do and or say anything regardless to try and win these swing seats. It's so fucking funny. That's true, Perry. They definitely will be just trying essentially sink as much public money into the private sector as possible to help his mates out before they inevitably get ejected from power, which I think is very funny. But obviously it's sad that they'll do that. Like, there's going to be a by-election after he after he resigns, and Lib Dems will not get re-elected in those seats. It's so absolutely hilarious.
The results, it's still early, we've just had a quarter of the results in, but what I am going to carry on doing is delivering on the people's priorities. Halving inflation, growing the economy, reducing debt, cutting waiting lists and stopping the votes. That's what people want us to do, that's what I'm going to keep hard at doing.
Now, the ex-Conservative leader of Medway Council blamed the
I would say two things that people are saying. First of all, they respect Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister. I've yet to have a conversation on the doorstep that isn't improved by mentioning the name Rishi Sunak and the job that he's doing. Clearly, people have been dissatisfied with the government's performance last year, but I think they're willing to give Rishi Sunak and the team a chance, and they recognise that he's working very hard.
So can I be clear? I'm going to interrupt you at this point, because what you're seeing so far, to be clear, is that the voting you've seen thus far, and it's early days, is that there is a sense that people are giving Rishi Sunak a chance.
Well, look,
by voting against him. I don't understand the logic, because it sounds on the face of it.
I mean, when you look at polling, it shows that Rishi Sunak is actually liked pretty heavily compared to Keir Starmer. Now, obviously, that's not exactly a glowing review of doing better than a sentient potato. Charisma and personality does not an electoral win make when people's energy bills are still high, people's cost of living is still high, food inflation is still 20%. Like, you cannot win yourself an election off the back of just looking good and being a slick performer and a slick media performer. You have to have policy. You have to have real, tangible, material results for people, which the Conservative ideology cannot do.
As if you're completely ignoring the voting that's happened and saying, well, we're doing the right thing. No, they might have voted against us, but we're doing the right thing.
It's been a really terrible night for us here in Plymouth. I think there's a number of factors at play. I think locally it's been very difficult. The Conservative group here has been through a very difficult...
Like, I hate to rag on people's appearances, but doesn't this guy look like a massive fucking cunt? Right? Doesn't this look like an absolute bell end that you'd never want to fucking shake hands with? I hate to rag on him, but look, he's not ugly or, malformed or anything. I just think that he looks like a twat. He just looks like, yeah, I'm a Conservative councillor. Like the guy who wears a leather jacket without realising he makes him look like a twat. Not like a good leather jacket, like a bad one. Like a dad's leather jacket. He's ex-army, or not surprised then. Did he go to Sandhurst?
Time, we've seen that reflected on the doors in the campaign, and we've seen that reflected in the results tonight. But we take it on the chin, and we keep going forward. I think there's really positive stuff happening at a national level, and we need to.
I love him saying that with people cheering a Labour victory in the background.
Double our efforts and make sure that we continue to work hard for people here in Plymouth.
I love how they just let it keep playing. Oh dear, they're just gonna let it keep playing in the background with him just staring at the camera going, oh I can't believe we keep losing. Oh God, that was too... No, just this humiliating. That's supposed to be on BBC as well.
You're blaming it on the turmoil in the Conservative Party that we saw last year, Partygate, Chris Pincher, the Liz Truss and the mini-budget and so on.
Looks like a regional area manager for Vodafone. He fucking does. That's literally the perfect description, madam. That's a perfect description. By the way, for people watching on Twitch, the commenter's name is Madam. I've not become President Sunday.
But many would say, well, actually, there seems to be a rejection of Rishi Sunak and precisely that change to a safer pair of hands, as it were. It seems like voters aren't really buying that, going by the level of losses that you are finding.
Well, I just simply don't buy that. Ultimately, let's be quite clear, all the pollsters were saying that they expected the Conservatives to have quite big losses across the country. We know that ultimately...
Who the fuck has the top button done up on a polo shirt? What the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? Johnny Mercer was the son of a banker. Went to private school, worked in the City of London as a banker, and then went a second lieutenant of the Royal Artillery, and then went to fucking Sandhurst. Of course he went to Sandhurst. I fucking knew it. I fucking knew it every time. Every time.
Obviously, it's been challenging with the fact that we're still, on average, probably 15, 16 points behind in the national polls. We've clawed that back quite a lot, and that's thanks to Rishi Sunak.
Points.
That's still Rishi Sunak delivering on those 5 pledges, making sure that he's talking to people day in,
Yeah, banker then military, like a genuine fucking psychopathic.
day out. We see the illegal migration bill.
Hasn't delivered on that
the
yet,
illegal
though, has
migration
he?
bill is a humongous step forward, which the Labour Party are completely opposed to. They're happy for Brussels
No
and
price
Strasbourg
for
to tell
Rwanda,
us.
though.
Well, if the Labour Party and their lefty lawyer mates weren't looking to stop us at every opportunity, if Sir Keir Starmer would, actually tell them to step aside so we can deliver on the people's priorities, stand up for the sovereignty of our country, deliver on taking back control of our laws and our borders, then perhaps we can get on with the work that we want to do. But sadly,
Have you not considered, Jonathan, that maybe the fact that you're continually pushing this narrative that hasn't won you any votes might be a losing strategy?
when we've got Sir Keir Starmer, who's happy to keep foreign national offenders on the ground here and then go on to commit other crimes, as was reported in the Sun newspaper, I think that's a huge concern, and voters will rightly be worried about the continuous flip-flopping from Sir Keir Starmer, whether that be on tuition fees, Jeremy Corbyn, or even his 10 pledges as leader.
Well, you made your point about Sir Keir Starmer.
I mean, to be fair to him, he's after misusing the culture war lines that aren't doing anything for him, he has at least pivoted to the correct line of attack that the Conservatives should be going on if they want to try and claw back something, which is attacking Starmer directly about him breaking his pledges and flip-flopping on policy, because that's the only thing that Labour are losing on really at the moment. When you look at polling amongst the electorate, people don't like Starmer, but they hate the Tories more.
But it looks like here the voters are responding to what Sir Keir Starmer is saying.
The problem is the damage that Boris Johnson and Liz Truss did to the Conservative brand. Number 10 will not be surprised by these bad results, and they will privately, Nick, share your description of them at the start of this piece. If you look at the national polls, the Conservatives are still a long way behind. They are in serious political difficulty, but the gap has narrowed since Rishi Sunak took over. And if you ask the question, who do people think will make the best Prime Minister, Sunak is pretty competitive with Starmer. So I think those two bits of data tell you what you need to know about the next election.
Oh, this is Gavin Barwell, Scribby.
The problem is not Sunak. He's improving the situation, but he started miles behind and he's got a hell of a job to do to try and close the gap fully.
The problem with a message of steady as she...
I think Gavin Barwell is correct there in that Sunak outperforms Starmer on those kind of polling. But, you know, again, if you don't fix the economy, that will do you nothing. That will get you nowhere.
Medway Council in Gillingham, that has gone from the Conservatives, who've held it for 20 years, to Labour. That's something that even Tony Blair did.
Yeah, Gavin Barwell, yeah, you're right, Mithril. Gavin Barwell does tend to seem... He does kind of look like simultaneously 14 and 54 at the same time.
Manage. It's a huge loss for you today, isn't it?
Well, look, I mean, there's areas, of course, we're disappointed. I was in Medway during the course of the campaign. But, you know, equally, there are areas that Labour need to win to show that they're making progress. And I don't think they are making the comprehensive progress that they need to make. For example...
But isn't Medway exactly a place that, like that, a Conservative heartland? It's places like that you need to hang on to if you're going to win a general election.
The Conservatives have been gaining seats in places like Peterborough, in places like Sandwell, in places like Bassetlaw. You know, those are all seats that Jeremy Corbyn won in 2017 that the Conservatives are gaining in this year, which I think means that for Sir Keir Starmer, It's not overall. It's not a uniformly good picture.
Oh yeah, so what Greg is basically saying there is that Keir Starmer is losing where Jeremy Corbyn won. I don't think that's the point you really want to make there, Greg, considering the remainder of your party's line is the idea that Jeremy Corbyn is literally Hitler.
For Labour.
Now, the ex-Conservative leader of Medway Council blamed the unpopularity of your government, cost of living plans, the planning changes, NHS failings. That's all down to you. A clear message from voters. What's going to change?
Look, as I said, we've only had a quarter of the results in. Actually, we're making progress in key election battlegrounds like Peterborough, Bassetlaw, Sandwell. But the message
I love it. You can just tell where the lines have been rehearsed. All the spin doctors have had the same message briefed out to every single MP to say the identical lines like fucking automatons. It really is embarrassing. It really is.
I am hearing from people tonight is that they want us to focus on their priorities and they want us to deliver for them. And that's about halving inflation, growing the economy, reducing debt, cutting waiting lists and stopping the votes. That's what people care about. That's what they want us to deliver. And that's what I and the government are going to work.
No, it's clear that that's not what they want. It's clear that you need to change your tactics because look at where the elections have gone. And it's not obviously they're not moving to that much to Labour. They're moving, but they're moving literally everywhere else. No one else is going with the same lines that you are, and people are departing. In fact, I would say that one thing you could probably attribute a lot of Lib Dem and Green gains to, and Independent and other places like non-Labour, non-Conservative gains to, is the fact that so many of these cultural issues and so many of these other missions and pledges that Rishi Sunak has stuck to are similar. Labour are doing similar things. They've talked about stopping the boats. They've talked about growing the economy, for example, as their main things, what they really care about, right? And that's the same shit that the Conservatives are saying, but Labour are going to pretend they're going to be doing it more competently. That's not resonating with people either, right? That's not a vision. That's not a positive vision. That's just copying what the Conservatives say, but being more managerial and looking more competent, which obviously, again, might be fine at keeping you in power, but it's not a good way of winning votes, of winning an election, of winning new votes for at this point. And after the catastrophe of Liz Truss, where people in the polls genuinely moved over to Labour from the Conservatives, you're not going to win them back with continuity. You're going to have to propose something new.
Very hard to do.
If Labour were not ahead right now, you'd be really worried about what on earth was going on.
Oh, absolutely. And saddos like me, the analysts, will say, look, and we will all believe 8% is not a clear margin for the Labour Party for all the reasons you've just identified. All of us, the analysts were saying, it has to be well over 10% Labour lead. And that's not expectation management. That was coming from people like myself, academics and others who sadly sit and pore over these results week in, week out. And Labour knew they were on their way to lead it to elections in 1995-96 because on the national equivalent vote share, they were leading by 15-20%. In all the elections in the mid-90s, 8% is actually.
Like you can, like, I wonder what, like, like a grooming gang pedo ring, this tie is supposed to signify, right? I hate to, be rude about a Conservative, but I will. If you're watching my channel, you know that I don't pull my punches on these shit cunts, and I don't, like. When you look at whenever a Conservative person comes on the screen and they're wearing a tie that is symptomatic of that is clearly a relic they have of some institution they're a part of, some old boys club, some conservative association or whatever it might be, where dark shit goes on. That's all I can think of. I can only think of that they just come from that there's something they picked up on Jeffrey Epstein's island or some shit.
A relatively small lead.
And that's one thing, it just shows how many people in the Conservative Party and the Conservative establishment just come from moneyed backgrounds of people who know other people, who come from a different class of establishment people who live in an alternate reality to the rest of us.
And although there's no question Labour and Liberal Democrats have done well so far, I expect them to do well for the rest of the day, those leads are not the sort that will guarantee general election.
How damaging has this last year been to your party? We're on the third prime.
I think people don't quite realise just how good Boris Johnson's policy platform looked to the electorate, right? Obviously, most people in chat and most people who watch my channel will agree with me on Boris Johnson as a person. He was woefully unqualified, who debased the office that he held, and he's a genuinely awful human being on basically every single possible ground. But the policy platform was interesting for a Conservative Party. It involved lax planning regulations, more house building. It involved building hospitals. It involved levelling up local communities in the north, for example. It signified the end of Conservative austerity, whilst also being pro-Brexit. So that's why he won the majority that he did. That's why he managed to gain the Red Wall seats. That's why he managed to pull together a coalition of loads of different people. Because he knew that austerity was getting everybody nowhere, which Rishi Sunak doesn't seem to understand.
Prime Minister, just in the last year, we've seen mortgage rates shoot up as a result of Tory policies. We've seen the biggest set of public sector strikes in decades, and we've seen the tax burden at its highest level for 70 years. I mean, that's a pretty tough sell for voters, isn't it?
I think the country has had a difficult year. The Conservative Party has had a difficult year. A lot of that is driven, of course, by Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, the big spike in energy prices, the big spike in inflation. But that is exactly why Rishi Sunak has given the priority he's been given to halving inflation, cutting the debt, growing the economy.
Yeah, exactly. They keep saying we're going to cut the debt, grow the economy. You will lose. The economy will continue to get worse. People are going to vote for somebody else, right? This continuous austerity platform will lose you the election. They cannot win, right? Because they refuse to actually change their economic policy platform to a winning platform, because they believe in what they believe in, like a religion, despite the fact that it continues going wrong and losing them elections and fucking over the economy, right? That's why people left always looking at this stuff and going, oh, there might be a hung parliament. No, the Conservatives are fucked. The economy will still be bad come next year, because this thing that he's proposing here, this both cutting the debt and also growing the economy, this way of trying to grow the economy without deficit spending, it's a pipe dream. It's nonsense. This monetarism has failed over and over and over and over and over and over again. The austerity agenda is hated by everybody. It's pointless trying. Just give up. Maybe it'll be a hung parliament, but there is absolutely no way that Rishi Sunak is going to be in number 10 next year. The end of next year, that is. Unless something incredible happens to the Labour Party.
Reducing hospital waiting lists and stopping the boats. Those are the government's priorities. Those, I think, are the people's priorities. Moving forward...
See, they say that every time, every single interview, they say, this is the government's priorities, it's the people's priorities. It's all fucking scripted. It's so disingenuous.
I think Rishi Sunak will be getting on with the job, with the whole cabinet, making sure we continue to deliver for the whole country.
So, but overall, a disappointing night for the Tories?
Well, overall, of course, it's a disappointing night, and we've lost some good councillors, and there'll be a number of people feeling quite sore this morning. People I know well, having been in the Conservative Party for the last 37 years. I know many of our councillors personally who've had reverses last night, but I do say quite clearly that this is...
Yeah, I mean, Boris Johnson's delivery at the dispatch box was effective. That is true, Scribby, but unfortunately it was only going to last so long until people realised that he was lying about every single thing that he mentioned. He was lying over and over and over again. He was addicted to lying. He could not stop lying, right? That's the issue with Boris Johnson, is the charisma can only get you so far when the country gets fucked over and you lie to get there.
Not a comprehensive picture.
Yes, my preferred result is a coalition which involves getting some kind of electoral reform, whether alternative vote or proportional representation, mixed member, instant runoff. I don't really care what electoral reform it is, as long as we lose first past the post. I think that is, again, my preferred result for the next election.
Labour under Keir Starmer. There's places there that Jeremy Corbyn won in 2017, like, for example, Peterborough, Sandwell, Bassetlaw, that the Conservatives have been gaining.
The same 3 seats they always keep talking about. Again, weird they keep comparing it to Jeremy Corbyn. I thought he was a communist who can never be taken seriously, but apparently, Keir Starmer can lose these seats, whereas Jeremy Corbyn can win them. What about that says to you about Keir Starmer and the Labour Party's position, and indeed your position?
Seats last night. So this is not a uniformly good picture for Labour.
I tell you who we haven't checked in on about this. Oh, hang a minute. Lola Box is having bonger debates.
Put into the country.
Who is?
The government.
But we've just...
You tell me.
You can't.
You can.
How?
Because they're getting on boats and ending up at Dover.
Yes, that's the thing that we said wasn't legal. So what's the legal route?
I don't know the legal route, but what I'm
just
saying
said
is the legal route should be...
I said you can't, and you said you can.
You have to have a certain amount of money, don't you, to get into Australia?
What's the legal route?
I don't know the legal...
Oh, he's a banned streamer, isn't he? On Twitch. Ah, shit. Oh, I guess I gotta stop watching. Boo. How sad. I'll tell you who we should check in on. Let's have a look at what Phil is saying about the election results.
Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss.
Why did it take him like 2 seconds to fade
Hi,
in?
my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss the general pattern of results in the local elections. Now that we've got a good idea of where it's going, and with a couple of very interesting individual ones as well. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, oh my goodness, there's been some tasty little results. I suppose we should begin by closing a chapter, actually. UKIP have no councillors left. They have been left completely purposeless ever since Brexit. Of course, I've no real idea why they're still clinging on. It was clear that their brains had jumped ship to what was at first the Brexit Party and now Reform UK, but limp on they did, and their last remaining councillors have now been completely wiped out. They no longer have any elected politicians anywhere in the country. But the main news, of course, is the pincer movement of Labour, the Lib Dems and the Green Party against the Conservatives. At the end of the video, I'm going to tell you about a real good pincer movement. But let's go through. So before I get on to Sunak's moment of panic from this morning, I think the award for the bravest face has to go to Johnny Mercer. Not the worst Tory MP by any stretch, so there may be some who've got a bit of sympathy for him. Not really sure I've got too much sympathy for any Tory MPs.
What's it? Well, you have not a bad Tory MP as it goes. Oh, this guy fucking went to Sandhurst. What are you talking about, Phil? What are you chatting about?
However, but he had to give an interview after his council of Plymouth lost 8 of the 9 Tory councillors that were standing this year. They weren't all standing. Labour gained control of the council. Mercer was left saying that his party needed to learn and go again tomorrow. I mean, that's all you can say, isn't it? At least he's alluding to the fact there are lessons to learn, meaning that mistakes were made. This was not the pitch from Rishi Sunak. He made a statement very early on in the proceedings, presumably to stop his opponents, including in his own party, maybe especially in his own party, stealing the narrative. Sunak said that the results show that people wanted him to keep doing what he was already doing.
What have you missed, Plexicon? Like an absolutely terrible night for the Conservatives, a fine to good result for Labour, and an incredibly great night for the Greens and the Lib Dems. Actually, probably the best electoral result for the Greens they've ever had in the UK, ever, at any kind of election. So, I'm positive. I have positive thoughts.
Focus on the priorities and all that. Mate, their priorities are public services and the cost of living. In fact, very helpfully, the Office for National Statistics published a poll of what people thought were the most important issues. Cost of living, the NHS, the economy, climate change, the cost of food, the cost of energy, their health. Small boats not in there. What Sunak is saying here is that he has no intention of doing anything differently. My priority is not to learn lessons. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to go down well with former Conservative voters who either stayed at home or voted for some bugger else out of frustration with the government. Because that's what Sunak was saying. I intend to learn no lessons. Privately, they must. They must accept that their culture wars aren't working. Their voter suppression may have. More about that in the stream tomorrow, I suspect. But the culture wars are not working. There were some Conservative gains, of course, individual ones. Bear in mind that the Conservatives lost a lot of seats and councils in 2019, largely as a result of the utter chaos that was Theresa May and her government. You know, she was in...
You're not going to mention the opposition, are you, Phil? You're not going to mention that people were enthused about Jeremy Corbyn, who was ahead in the polls, who was Labour are polling are like 39% at that point, like 3 points ahead of the Conservatives. We're not going to mention Jeremy Corbyn putting forward a positive vision for the country, are we, Phil? No, it was just Theresa May, though, wasn't it? Yeah, definitely. We'll go with that.
In complete freefall, as was the party. So some of those voters...
MCH, Reform UK came from the Brexit Party, not UKIP.
Who stayed away in 2019 or voted for someone else, they were always going to return when the party looked like it was vaguely sensible, or at least on an even keel.
That's what I would do, Plexkin. If I was in Scotland, I would be voting for SNP for Westminster and Scottish Greens for Holyrood.
It doesn't matter that the country's in an even worse state. These are Tory voters. They were only upset in 2019 because they didn't want to vote for the absolute mess that the party represented at the time. But these gains, though baffling when you look at the state of the country, were inevitable. It's just how some people are. But they did little to stem the tide of net losses. The small boat's just not doing it. And
Loner Box is indeed up for talking on stream. So let me jump in his green room. Come on. Where is the Discord link? Let me find Loner Box's Discord link. Come on, Discord, open up. Oh. Screen room. Hello, how you doing? You alright? Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. I mean, pretty good actually. Seems like an excellent result if you're a leftist. Yesterday. Oh, full council control for the first time ever. I mean, I was just saying, I think it's probably the Greens' best result in any election, both local or national, in the UK's history, as far as I can see, and taking gains both off the Conservatives and off Labour as well.
So if you just want to let me know whatever your thoughts are, you can preach if you want.
I mean, the main thing I think we can see from this is that I think that there's a couple of things that I've seen that I want to dispute. I mean, one of the main things I see from leftoids at the moment is, well, hang on a minute, the Labour vote only increased by 0.1% from the previous round of elections for these particular wards, or whatever it is. And this shows that Keir Starmer isn't good enough, and they might have a hung parliament. And BBC are projecting something like an 7 or 8 point lead for the Labour Party based upon these council election results, and that's all just cope. That is projections based upon a different voting demographic, based on way lower turnout, and based upon the fact that when people vote in general elections, they have completely different voting patterns to local elections. I still think that the vast majority of the time, what we will see is that Labour will win at the next election. The other thing that I've seen as well from voting patterns is that the culture war shit is not working, right? It's the same how the GOP are losing in America because they're obsessed with trans people's genitals, basically, and they continue to talk about it over and over and over again, despite it not being a vote winner. It's turning people away. The same thing's happening here too with all of the Stop the Boat stuff, which didn't even enter the two people's top 5 priorities when you looked at the things people voted on when it came to the elections, the local elections. Stopping the boats, trans people, it's not on anybody's radar. A minority of conservative base headbangers really are into it, but that's it. So if you want to have a base election, then that's good enough. But you can't really do that in the UK in the same way that you can in the US.
Mm. I didn't know that. So neither trans rights neither trans issues nor fucking stop votes is a priority for Conservative voters or for British voters.
For British voters, yeah. We looked on an overall scale, yeah. We look at the main concerns they have, which is, of course, going to be cost of living. It's going to be the state of the NHS. It's going to be all of that kind of stuff. And Greg Hans was on Sky News today. I was watching a clip on stream, and he was essentially saying, well, actually, no, one of the things that we're going to do, the public people's priorities are stopping the votes. They are getting the deficit down, or whatever it is. And I'm like, well, in this case, you've admitted that you're fucked, right? They're continuing to follow this austerity, neoliberal kind of monetarist economic policy on a national scale, thinking that if they just continually do it forever, ad infinitum, somehow that will eventually lead to the economic growth that's eluded them for the last 13 years. And that will translate somehow into increased living standards because they believe in neoliberalism like a religion. And so unless they properly reverse course and do what I've been saying the entire time, which is a return to Keynesianism, like COVID was a war economy, essentially. We had to, engage in the same kind of levels of spending that we did during the war, with no kind of gains in productive capacity within the economy. And the way that we dealt with that in a post-war period was by further deficit spending on infrastructure, on the supply side, through the state. That we need a new Attlee, essentially. Obviously, Starmer's not giving that as either, so that's not something to look forward to. But the Conservatives can't see that either. So we'll only have further decline of the economy, but the living standards will only get worse. And the Conservatives are going to get absolutely hammered at the next election on every single front. In places like the North, they're going to lose to the Labour Party. In the Southwest, they're going to lose to the Liberal Democrats. There'll be vote splits with Reform UK, who want to see proper anarcho-capitalist supply side libertarian type stuff as well, whilst continually harping on about things they don't like about the Windsor framework. So really, if we can take anything from this set of council results, the Tories have nowhere to go. They're completely on every single possible scale. They're fucked.
Yeah,
which is good.
I feel like it's almost been like a cycle with UK politics, because it was 13 years roughly that was the end for Labour as well before the Conservatives came in, and now it's the same thing for the other side. What do you think is gonna? I know Keir has just dropped another pledge. Can't even keep count of them now. With tuition fees, wasn't it? He wasn't going to raise tuition fees, or he was going to bring them down, but he's not doing that anymore. So, I don't know. What do you think that means for Labour going forward?
Well, one thing I did notice, I was watching some of the election coverage on Sky News last night, and they had they had strategists on. They had a Labour strategist and a Conservative strategist. And the Conservative strategist was specific in saying that, well, if you look at the national polling, Labour are way ahead, an average 13 to 15 points ahead when you look at most polls from places like Omnisis and from YouGov. The YouGov track has them a 12% average lead, but it's different depending on the methodology. But when you look at the polling between Sunak and Starmer, Sunak is consistently ahead of Keir Starmer on preferred Prime Minister. Which obviously both of them behind don't know, because no one likes either of them. But it's interesting that Keir Starmer is a poor performer in comparison to Sunak as a person, but that gets overridden by people's material conditions, which are obviously continually getting worse because of the Conservative failure on the economy. And she was saying, this Conservative strategist, that their singular tactic now is going to be, as well as the cultural stuff that they've kind of had to double down on, and they're going to start attacking Starmer as a person and his history as Labour Party leader, not on grounds of, well, he broke the pledge, which means that he's betraying the membership, which is what Labour left people like myself would talk about, but instead they're talking about, well, this guy lied to his own membership, what makes you think he won't lie to you? That kind of is the narrative that they're going with. They're going to say, well, hang on a minute, if he can flip-flop on tuition fees, upon nationalisation, on whether or not he supports Jeremy Corbyn or not, whether he's a friend, whether he's an enemy, whether they believe in Brexit, whether they don't, whether they want a second referendum, etc., all these different positions that he has no particular belief in, really. I mean, again, if there's anything we can learn from the last 2.5 years of Keir Starmer being Labour leader, it's that he will literally say whatever he thinks will be the most electorally viable thing for him to say, regardless of whether he believes it or not. Doesn't matter what the issue is, he will just say whatever it takes to get him elected. And they're going to attack him, A, for his dishonesty, and B, because they just don't think that he's a great performer, because let's be real, he isn't. I mean, if you've seen him at PMQs, he's wooden.
Yeah. I think that's also, I did wonder about that, because Keir has basically thrown most of the British left under the bus, because I guess he assumes that most of the public just don't care. The public don't care enough about Corbyn or about lefty pledges and all that shit to stop voting Labour over Conservative. But the fact that if that can backfire and become a weapon for the Conservative Party to say, well, people in the middle he lied to the left. Why won't he lie to you? That's interesting. It's almost like they're going to try to make like an American presidential style thing, like just make it all about the candidate rather than the party or rather than the situation or the policies. That's quite interesting.
I mean, they're going to have to. I mean, they're absolutely going to have to, because none of their policies are. People have lost faith in their political economy, the things that they kind of core beliefs they have about how the economy should or shouldn't work. And in fact, people were being disabused with this kind of stuff in 2017, 2018. Hence, you saw the growth of the Corbyn vote in 2017 election, and also the change in policy platform from Boris Johnson. Right? I don't think people always talk of Boris Johnson the person, because he was obviously unfit for the role of prime minister. But one thing people don't get about Boris Johnson's platform is that it was the end of austerity, right? He didn't run on being economically competent and look at the crazy Jeremy Corbyn. They actually put forward, for the first time in basically a long time for the Conservative Party, a positive message, right? They said, we're going to level up the country. We're going to build 40 new hospitals. We're going to start building more houses. In fact, they already were. More council houses got built in 3 years of Boris Johnson than a decade of Tony Blair, for example, on one thing. Right, so Boris Johnson was, because kind of he doesn't really have an ideology. He only really cares about winning and being liked and being the figurehead for the country. He's a true populist in that sense, that you just literally would say and say or do anything to make him as popular as possible, which meant that he kind of was, in this gnarled, only specifically economic way, probably the most left-wing prime minister that we've had since Gordon Brown. And on some issues, to the left of Gordon Brown, like genuine state deficit expenditure on things like new hospitals and levelling up, rather than this whole balancing the books thing that we got from basically every government since Margaret Thatcher, quite frankly, looking at the economy like a household budget when it really isn't.
That was really weird about the Corbyn-Boris debates, was that it was like Boris seemed to be the one who spent more time saying we need to fund the NHS and build a lot of hospitals and shit like that, whereas Corbyn's stance was, no, they're not. They're going to gut it instead. It was like a really strange position to be in, with like the document with crossed out, like the redacted stuff. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, that's what happened, ironically, as well, but like Centene and Virgin Care.
Yeah, they didn't build the hospitals. Yeah. I think it was 6 that ended up being, or even less. Yeah. I mean, I don't really need to care that much about any of it, because I just get to SNP or Green.
I'm assuming you would do what I would do, which would be in Westminster you'd vote for SNP and in Holyrood you'd vote for the Greens.
Yeah, that's usually what I do. Yeah,
makes sense.
So any first past the post vote goes to SNP, and any proportional or regional vote goes to Greens. Yeah.
Yeah, that does make sense to me. I mean, that's what I'm hoping for. Right? I do think we'll get a Labour majority in the next election. Unless Starmer just kicks a puppy or some shit, I don't know. But the ideal results, as far as I'm concerned, would be some kind of hung parliament where either the Liberal Democrats or the Greens or the SNP or somebody forces the Labour Party to engage in electoral reform. The amount of cope that I've seen from like the FBP Remainer types talking about after Starmer ditched another pledge to support electoral reform, they've all doubled down, saying, "Oh no, it's just a 5D chess move that he's doing, so that he'll do it in the second manifesto, or it'll be something that he'll do further down the line." He really genuinely believes in it, but all of this is just a tactical move that he's done to try and win the next election. When what would Starmer have to gain from changing the electoral system? Not only does it keep Labour in power, because it forces quote-unquote progressive types to come behind the Labour banner rather than vote for any of the other predominantly nominally left-wing parties that they're competing with for votes. And second of all, it allows him to keep the Labour left in check. They can't leave and start their own party. There is, quote-unquote, as far as John McTernan said, nowhere else for them to go. Or was that Peter Mandelson? I forget. But there is basically nowhere else for them to go as long as first past the post remains. So there's less than zero chance of Starmer supporting any kind of electoral reform, even an alternative vote, which would gift the Labour Party seats, but would force the Labour right to concede to the Labour left on policy. So that's why they don't support even an alternative vote, let alone proportional representation.
Yeah, I saw something about. I still keep hearing this thing. I think someone actually wrote a book about it, about how the only thing, like this weird Starmer 5D jest theory that nothing matters in British politics anymore until the general election, and then people just do the manifestos and it just goes from there. And apparently, there are people still holding with this idea that Starmer is just going to unleash like a 2017-esque manifesto in the fucking like in the run up with no backstory for people to attack because he's held everything close to his chest until then. I don't know though. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just going to just wait and see. I guess it doesn't really matter to me because I just get to wait and see what happens anyway. But yeah. Fuck.
I mean, what I would say in response to that is that if you are going to plan towards trying to have some kind of 2017 style manifesto, you have to build the narrative to prepare for it. You have to say policy. You don't have to commit to anything. You don't have to, build some kind of movement supporting a particular policy that you then announce. But you have to construct the right narrative. You have to talk in a way such that those policies, when you release them, are going to win over the public and at that point, which clearly Keir Starmer isn't doing. You've seen when him or Rachel Reeves or Wes Streeting, they have the discussions. They are the things that they are sure on. One of the only real policy prescriptions that you can actually glean from them is treating the government budgets like a household budget. Like Starmer said he won't bring out the big government checkbook, quote unquote. Rachel Reeves talking about having an iron grip on the economy. That's a prescription that they've made, which is conceding to the neoliberal narrative. It's conceding to a monetarist viewpoint of macroeconomic policy in general, which you wouldn't do if you were then going to come around and say, well, actually, we're going to deficit spend on supply side interventionist economics in the future, right? That's not what you do if you were doing that. And the same thing with a bunch of like things like the law and order stuff and all of the kind of culture war things, where if you were genuinely going to try and run on them as a manifesto pledge, you would want to try and quote unquote manufacture the consent for them earlier by creating a contrary narrative. But in what way is the Labour narrative different from the Conservative one, other than we will do what they're doing but more competently, apart from maybe on green energy? That's basically the only good thing that I've seen from them so far.
Yeah, I think it was green energy. And is the workers' rights thing from Corbyn's era still there? I know it's still on their website. The one that basically is like kind of like mimicking the French thing, where there's a lot more safeguards against the right for an employer to contact you when you're out of work, like after you've clocked out, like that kind of thing. I think there's a few labor protections that are added, but they're only on the website. I don't think they're actually listed as like a proper policy.
I've not heard any politicians talk about it, so it's probably pretty up in the air. But the thing is that I think that the Corbyn one was trying to roll back the union restrictions back to pre-Thatcher. And I think as far as I've heard from what I've seen from people like Rayner and from, because she's the Shadow Secretary for the Future of Work, is they've said they're going to roll back the 2016 trade union laws, which as far as I'm concerned isn't good enough, because the real killer is sectoral bargaining. Like even like the far less radical Labour Party in Australia, they're introducing sectoral bargaining right now. So the fact that wouldn't be included is not good enough for me as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I guess I can only wait and see.
Yeah, true.
What's your kind of focus politically for between now and an election? What kind of topics are you going to be?
The economy, specifically the economy. I mean, what I was saying before about needing to treat the economy like we've come out of a war. There needs to be a new ATLI, right? It needs to be huge amounts of state-led infrastructure that we need. Housing, energy, farming possibly as well even. Because we've seen what's happened with food prices. We cannot rely, especially in a post-Brexit world, on having a gigantic trade deficit and no manufacturing. Peter Hitchens was talking about this on some show he was on previously about... No, it wasn't. It was Konstantin Kisin talked about how the demise of manufacturing in this country essentially has ruined the north of the country. You look at Whitehaven, I used to date a girl lived in Whitehaven, and the entirety of the actual area itself, everything's closed down apart from Sellafield. If you live in Whitehaven, you work at Sellafield or you work at a betting shop. There's no jobs, there's no nothing. All of the kids have moved away. And in fact, you'll see that a lot around the country. Northern towns, places like Accrington, Burnley, Bolton, places where there were previous manufacturing jobs available, all the kids have moved away because those manufacturing jobs don't exist, and they've become siloed inside city constituencies, having been to university during the university boom in the Blair years. So you have like rich property-owning boomers in rural seats with no jobs, and all the jobs are in these hyper-liberal, hyper-left-wing, progressive city areas. So that's why Keir Starmer's going for the hard culture war stuff as well, because he thinks that the way to win these votes over is to fight over 55, 60-year-olds who are not progressive and do own property, but live in red wall constituencies.
Sorry. Yeah, I noticed that with Biden is like a big thing of his popularity is like they've kind of started appealing to the increase in manufacturing, because I think from Obama all the way through Trump there was like a drop in manufacturing, but under Biden, like it's actually, I think they're in a surplus. Like there's more manufacturing being produced that actually decreased than being closed. So yeah, it's
We shall see.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
But
So,
regardless of whether or not there's a Labour majority, Labour minority, the one thing that you can see that is good to take away from all of the local election results here is that the Tories are they fucked it completely, and in every direction too, both to their left and to their right as well. In the we are still seeing on a national level Reform UK polling at like 7%. And if you think that all of Reform UK the vast majority are all just former Tory voters, that's the difference between a hung parliament and Labour majority. So,
wow. Yeah, it's about fucking time. Like Tories have been in power since 2010, so since they turned like fucking 18 or 19 or and then that's just what I've lived under, you know. Like I was a working adult it's always been Tory rule. Be nice to see a little chop and change, you know.
Yeah, I got 1 year of Labour government, and then I got the rest of it as Conservative. I've been politically active the entirety of the time Conservatives have been in power, and I mean, to be fair, like a lot of the issues that we have now were precipitated by the failures of the Blair administration, not building any houses, buy-to-let mortgages, PFIs, the Iraq War, the financial crisis. Those all contributed to the austerity narrative that we then got, the kind of people who gained property wealth because of things like buy-to-let mortgages, for example, during the Blair years. They're the same people who voted for David Cameron in 2015. They're the same, swing voters who are older Gen Xer types who were seen as the swing constituency voters and have been for the entirety of the time that I've been trying to be politically active during general elections. And so that was obviously a natural reaction to the right to buy coming out of the 80s, but nevertheless, this is 45 years of neoliberalism, 45 years of monetarism, 45 years of failure to address systemic issues using the power of the state. And the only thing that can properly solve that is to completely reverse it, which I don't have faith Starmer will do.
Well, here's what I wonder, like, as far as how left or right we expect Keir to be. I'm pretty confident that that Keir wouldn't do like another Iraq war. I think occupying a foreign country, that's just, no one wants that anymore.
Yeah.
That's just done. And it probably will be done for a very long time. And we didn't even leave Afghanistan that. So I'm quite confident with that. It seems that chapter of West foreign policy is hopefully closed for at least the rest of my fucking life. But I wonder about economics. I know that mainstream economics is more Keynesian now than they were in the 90s, right?
Yes.
Like even like when people, the IMF loan. The thing with the IMF loans is back in the day, they used to think that the best way to get their return on an IMF loan was to gut every social security, serve every public spending program, and just liberalize really quickly, really recklessly. They don't really do that anymore. Nowadays, when like IMF do loans, they will say like you need to, they'll encourage some level of social spending because it turns out it's just better for everyone. I wonder if you think that kind of orthodoxy is going to change when it comes to Keir, or maybe also with the fact that I guess momentum and all those guys are still kind of roughly there, although like most of the left-wing membership is gone. I don't know. Do you think like Starmer's going to be just as economically right as Blair, or do you think it's kind of like moved on a little bit since then?
I think he will not. I think it's difficult. What you have heard is that there are some advisors they're getting in outside from the Labour right, because Keir Starmer knew nothing about economics at all when he became an MP, and as soon as he became leader of the party, the Labour right had to like get in a crack team of economists to teach him the very basics of how an economy works, which I think is quite funny. But it's from the Labour right, so these are people who are fully throated in their beliefs in neoliberalism because they've been around since the Blair's babes of the 1997 election. The true entrists, I like to call them, really the actual neoliberals who became members of the party during the Blair years, unlike the kind of loose alliance of Soc Dems and Dem Socs that you got in the Kinnock years and before. And the Labour right fully throated believe in this stuff. But whether or not that will reflect in policy when it comes to the manifesto, because I know that when the other economists they've been speaking to, people like Mariana Mazzucato, she's much more Keynesian. Whether or not they'll listen to her, we shall remains to be seen. But the problem is the Labour right are, some of them, the worst people in politics. They really are absolutely unscrupulous, despicable people. They're not saying that there are not people on the Labour left who are like that. I mean, Seamus Milne, etc. But the Labour right are fully awful politicians to have to deal with. And the fact that, look at the kind of shit that Wes Streeting is coming out in the wake of the NHS strikes and like the huge outpouring of public support for the nurses and the doctors, which you would be unthinkable in any year before now, with people still remembering the winter of discontent, for example. Unthinkable for them to have this outpouring of support that they are having now, and for the Conservative Party to go to war with the junior doctors, right? And then Wes Streeting comes along and saying, "Oh no, actually no, I want to go to war with the junior doctors as well. I don't want to miss out on the optical nightmare that is opposing the pay packets of the most loved profession in the country. More like literally the most loved profession in the country is nurses. I think it's 85% or 90% trustworthiness when it comes to poll rankings on YouGov. But the only way you can possibly reason yourself into this position is if you fully throated have a belief in NHS privatisation, NHS reform, as Wes Streeting calls it, whilst being praised by Kate Andrews from The Spectator and from the Institute of Economic Affairs. Like when you have the right-wing think tanks praising your NHS reforms, it's time for a rewrite. It's time to rethink your policy prescriptions as a quote-unquote left-wing MP. Because it's not good optically, right? If you're looking like I am through the lens of Keir Starmer saying, and his front bench saying whatever it thinks that they think it will take to get elected, when you and I both know that the NHS is like a national religion at this point, it really is.
Yeah.
You can't be pro NHS privatisation and win or outwardly pro NHS privatisation to win an election, which is why they say NHS reform as a kind of dog whistle towards it. So the only possible reason I can think for them to want to continue pushing this stuff is if they genuinely believe it. Because if they were just lying about it, they would go the other way, surely, and just be like, "Oh, we love the NHS. We want to throw loads of money at it because we want to pay the junior doctors exactly what they want." Because that's what the people the actual electorate want to see. Is they want to see the strikes resolved. They want to see doctors and nurses paid. So it doesn't make any sense for them to oppose that unless they genuinely believe it.
Yeah, it's almost like it would be better if they were just cynical politicians who want to win, because what they're doing it's not very popular anymore.
No.
Yeah, I think a lot of that economic neoliberalism stuff it's a lot less popular than it used to be. But yeah, I guess I just have to wait and see. Shit, I mean they'll win. It looks like they're almost definitely going to win, so we'll know.
Yeah, they can't. The Conservatives will lose. They cannot win unless they become social democrats. Did you see a couple of things as well? Was there were in I forget what was it, Portsmouth and Liverpool and somewhere else. There were like 4 separate occasions where left-wing Labour councillors that got kicked out of the party for being too left-wing, for liking the wrong Facebook pages. They beat Labour running against them as independents or running as Greens, which I think is very funny. In fact, one of the Liverpool community independents, a guy called Alan Gibbons, he won 78% of the vote. Having defected from Labour to Independent, which I think is very funny.
Wow.
An entire ward in Leicester, which was all Labour in 2019. One of them got kicked out for being too left wing, so he got suspended by the Labour Party. So then defected to the Greens, and then not only did he win his seat as a Green in a Labour ward, the other 2 councillors that won in that ward were also Greens as well. So not only did Labour kicking out leftoids mean they lost those seats in that ward, they also lost their other seats as well because they lost the trust of the electorate there too. So it just shows that this whole purge the left stuff
I'm opposed to what you're doing.
It's not good for the Labour Party. They want to be the quote unquote broad church that Keir Starmer keeps saying that they are. That would be much better for them electorally.
Yeah. I feel like the broad church thing kind of got memed out a little bit. Yeah, who knows? Okay, did you have anything else you want to talk about?
Not. I think that mainly covers my main positions on this thing. Let me just check my bookmarks, see if there's anything else that I've missed out on that's worth mentioning.
Yeah, go for it.
Just in general, I think the main thing I would say as a leftist wanting to move the dial over, so to speak, on electoral politics, given the prescription that my supposition that that Conservatives cannot win the next election, I would just recommend leftists to vote for the Green Party and essentially turn it into what UKIP was for the right in the run-up to 2016 on the back of wanting to see electoral reform. Because, we can do it now. We're not going to risk the Conservative government by splitting the quote-unquote left vote. But what we can do is make the case that first past the post doesn't work. There's no point in continuing to have it as an electoral system, especially if it's like 35% Labour, 29% Tory, however many, and then various 20% in teams of the other parties, right? It's very difficult to make the case for first past the post under such split conditions for who people want to vote for. And you can move the Labour Party on policy from the left in the same way UKIP have turned Conservative Party into Blue Kip at this point.
Yeah.
And when you see people like Zach Polanski and Carla Denyer given time to expand upon their policies, upon their platform, on these media networks, they win people over. They're excellent communicators. Their policy resonates with people. They're good at answering questions and being in debates. Carla Denyer was excellent on Question Time when faced with people like Wes Streeting, for example. And they're not going to get the position to be on these networks if they're still polling at 4 or 5% on a national level. So that's the reason why on a national level I would vote for the Green Party at general elections. I mean, I vote for the Labour because my CLP are really good at the local elections. I think, I don't know if you saw this, but in my CLP, there's an incredibly popular candidate who got removed from the shortlist by the Labour bigwigs trying to interfere with the selection process. And the whole selection panel resigned in response. And when this candidate showed up for the CLP meeting to choose the candidate, he got applauded by the whole CLP. So it just shows. So my CLP is properly left wing, properly socialist constituency Labour Party. So I was happy to vote for them in the locals, but at a general election, I would vote for the Green Party.
Yeah. And so when you say the UKIP thing, you mean also doing that even in seats where they're not gonna, it's not gonna be like a swing vote, or it's just to have the number go higher, right? Not really to win seats.
I mean, I still think that even if it's a swing vote, I think that having a Tory MP in your area because of a vote split on a national scale when Labour is still winning an election and Conservatives are still losing, I think that is a price worth paying for the overall gains that you get from having a higher national platform for the Green Party as a whole. I think it's unlikely that will be the case. I don't think there'll be a vote split between the Labour and the Greens as big enough for them to lose seats, but how are you going to convince them to win over the Green voters unless they see electoral damage for it? And the best time to do that electoral damage is when Conservatives can't win overall, right? You can't have a Conservative
I know what you mean.
government.
I actually kind of agree with you, because I think I think tactical voting is actually, I'm maybe less convinced by it now than I used to be, because what seems to happen in the UK is that one party is going to win by a landslide anyway. And when that was happening with Tories, lots of people voted for UKIP in general elections. UKIP never won a seat. Greens have won a seat, I think. Alan Lucas had a seat. So they didn't need to, though. They didn't need to win a seat to pull the Tories to the right. So I don't know why, if you think UKIP can do that for the Tories, then it's not like, I don't think lefties going green is going to split the vote to the point that Tories win. Definitely not now. Maybe if there was like a 3% split, then you want to be more careful with that. But I completely get you. I think that.
Because I'm in a swing constituency and I would still vote Green.
Yeah. You're in a what constituency?
A swing constituency.
Okay. Labour Conservative.
Yes, Labour Conservative. Darren Henry is the Conservative MP at the moment, the most expensive MP in Parliament.
Oh.
Yeah,
bold.
He's also apparently not only is he always absent from his seat, but he once sent one of his party staffers round to someone's house because of a negative article they wrote about Darren Henry online. He's a proper piece of work. Literally sending the goon squad round.
Fuck, I think my Discord disconnected. Hang on. Wait, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still there.
Okay, my stream was disconnected, but it's back now. Okay.
Okay.
It wasn't
I mean,
full on.
I think Discord's having some problems on my end too, so.
Yeah, that's okay. All right, I guess just to preserve my fucking whatever stream VOD or whatever that's going on. Yeah, sorry, did you have anything else?
No, I think that covers my main points I wanted to make about the electoral landscape from the results that we've seen.
Yeah, that's cool. I do have something for you, actually. I don't know how to redirect to your channel. I think you need to put me in a permission list in your channel. Do you know how to do that?
Yes, I do know how to do that. Let me... Settings, permissions, or community, I think it's in.
It's community, yeah.
Yeah, live redirects. And you're on Lonerbox Live or Lonerbox?
Live.
Lonerbox Live. Yeah, I have you down as a redirect, yep.
Okay, cool. I'll try and do that after the stream if I figure
Amazing.
out how to.
Thank you. I've just got a raid from Kevin Logan on mind as well, so keeping the faith, and also thank you. That's much appreciated.
That's all good. You've got the permission role in my Discord now. If you want to jump in and talk about anything while I'm here, you can do that.
Amazing. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. Take care then.
No worries. And for Lonebox's viewers, I'm going to do a quick shout out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's at No Justice MTG on basically every platform. Luckily, I have a unity of branding. So it's Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Just No Justice MTG for everything.
Awesome. All right. Cool. It was nice talking to you.
Shout stuff up to my chat. I've got actual viewers once since I've just been raided. Not that they probably all know who you are anyway, but.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, fucking Lonerbox Live, whatever. Fuck you. All right. That's my shout out. Okay.
Go for it. Sweet. Cool. No worries. Cheers for that. I'll catch you in a bit.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Did Lonerbox get banned on Twitch for some reason? Yeah, I'm definitely going to delete this stream VOD after the fact. And you protect my own channel. Anyway, back to what Phil was talking about.
Where was this message spoken more loudly than in Medway in Kent? This is Small Boats Central. It's Nigel Farage's stomping grounds. Medway is one of the areas most vulnerable to the propaganda about asylum and channel crossings. Yet the Conservatives lost 13 council seats and Labour gained 11, taking control of the whole council into the bargain. This council had been in Conservative control for 20 years, and it didn't just flip from Conservative to no overall control, because that's usually what happens. You lose a few councillors and you lose control, but no one, there needs to be a coalition. No, this was fully flipping from Conservative
I think Lonerbox watched the infrared debate
to Labour control. This is the reason why you may see people making such a fuss over this particular council. It's been solidly Conservative for 2 decades. This isn't one of the ones that fell with the Red Wall collapse of 2019. No, this has been solidly Conservative for 2 decades. It's a prime target for the culture wars. And yet, Labour still comfortably...
Yeah, by all means, post it, Wayward.
...flipped it. The Conservatives and Labour, of course, are both...
Infrared is a content creator, like a Marxist-Leninist.
...engaged in expectation management, or they were ahead of the election. Labour was saying, oh, net gain of 400, that'd be nice, that'd be a good night, won't it? Meaning, of course, they expect to get much more.
Go home.
The Conservatives claimed they were on for losing 1,000 seats.
Becky Sphere with the raids. How are you doing? You're right. Welcome. I do not know who you are. Let me check out your channel. Twitch.tv/Becky Sphere. Didn't Medway lose City States Rochester because they forgot to send the renewal paperwork? No, I've not heard of that, but that's very funny if so. For Infrared is first and foremost a twat. I mean, also very true, 8DX, man. Very true. You cover climate change. Well, how fucking based of you. Thank you. An important subject. How to spot BS climate takes. That sounds interesting. Let me find your stream VOD and we'll have a quick watch.
All standards, libertarians, right? That like him, right? They don't want any of the, they like cryptocurrency. They don't care about age of consent sometimes. That's the group, right? Anarchists, I guess that would also be the group too.
We're standing up for. And watching Mr. Beat as well. Base, awesome. Everyone in my chat, go and follow Becky Sphere. That sounds like a cool channel. I will drop a follow myself. Almost Britpol. Love it.
meaning they expected to lose way fewer. But at the moment, you know, people are wondering if they might not get there. The Tories cannot claim victory if they lose 1,000 seats. If they're saying that's their expectation, first of all, that's a bit of a loser expectation. But if they lose 1,000 seats, it's like, well, you didn't really add any value in your campaign, did you? If they lose more than 1,000, they cannot claim anything other than defeat. The thing with expectation management is that you will claim you will get a worse result than you expect so that you can claim victory. That's how it works. Now, I will say that at the time of recording, there are still a lot of councils and seats still to declare. I can't do a proper full roundup until the stream tomorrow evening, so I don't know whether the Conservatives will keep their losses below 1,000, but if they do, the way it's looking at the moment, I'm not sure it's going to be by much. And if they did mess up their expectation management, that is quite bad for them. Not just in terms of losing control of the narrative, but it suggests that your strategists messed up. And if they can mess up in one election,
pronouns are she, her.
They can mess up in another. So we'll wait for the final result, you know, which, as I say, I'll discuss tomorrow. But if the Tories have...
I know I'm not doing a great job at presenting at the moment because I couldn't be bothered getting dressed properly. So I'm just still in what I was wearing when I went to bed last night. But I do apologise for not making an effort today.
Let's judge this one. Expect pressure on Sunak to at least change his strategies. And although Sunak may have been getting his statement out early today to scatter the vultures, Keir Starmer was only too eager to make statements early on as well. I noted that he said that we can now go on to change the country. He said to cut the...
Hey, thank you for the follow. I am indeed literally a communist.
...cost of living, cut waiting lists and cut crime. And I'm thinking, I wonder if that's going to be part of the slogan for the next election. I mean,
to be fair, I'm not making the point that you need to present in a certain way to have certain pronouns, but I'm just generally apologising for just not making an effort to look presentable rather than presenting.
Because I'm literally a communist.
Thank you for the follow, Becky. It's very much appreciated.
Because you can see it working, can't you? You could say, after 14 years, people are sick of these Tory cuts. The cuts to living standards, the cuts to public services, the cuts to opportunities for our children. The only cuts people are interested in are cuts to the cost of living, cuts to NHS waiting times, and cuts to crime. That'd work. The main saving grace for the Conservatives is that, unlike in the mid-1990s, when they were getting battered in local elections ahead of the 97 general election, Labour are not the only beneficiaries. Lib Dems, Greens, Independents, they're all cleaning up. So although the Tory performance is absolutely dismal, that the healthy mix of other parties benefiting restricts Labour's gains, that is a little consolation prize for the Tories. Because when it comes to voter perception, in terms of believing that there's going to be a change of government next year, people...
I love how he can't even talk about it in the it's good that the Greens and the Lib Dems are gaining ground for progressive specifically, because he's so completely sold on entirely being a Labour person rather than a progressive person. But he's like, well, actually, the Greens doing well. That's bad. That's good for the Tories. That is, you can't do good things for the Lib Dems and the Greens because that's too good for the Tories. You must only vote for the Labour right and only the Labour right candidate that's full-throated in support of neoliberalism. Yes, they are indeed a bit shit, Mummy Sasha. Yeah, they are very shit. But you know, could be worse. But yeah, it's frustrating because, you know, the Greens winning is good for progressives. Obviously, the Lib Dems suck, and I hate the Liberal Democrats. And in many cases, the Liberal Democrats are indeed worse than the Conservatives. But even so.
We'll look at the Labour results as much as the Tories.
Neoliberalism.
Several media outlets...
Hey, Googie Shilling with the gifted sub. Thank you very much. Appreciated for the financial support. If people want to support the stream, they can do by subscribing on Twitch for $3.99 or for free with Twitch Prime. By linking your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account. Or you can become a member on YouTube for just 99 English pence. All the racists, bigots and xenophobes deciding they can no longer vote for the Tories or the UK. Why have they decided that Labour are better vote and suit their ideals more? Hey, Woe to Story with a 1312. Thank you. Or UKIP. I think that you're looking too far into it, Anarcho-Arachnid. They're just voting for the other party because the economy is fucked. The culture war stuff is not on anyone's priorities. Actually, we have polling from these local elections where all the cultural, xenophobic, racist stuff, no one cares about it. No one's interested in it. It's not people's priority. People's priority is the economy. The people's priority is the cost of living crisis. And the Conservatives have failed, and they're voting for literally anybody else. Which, again, I don't think Labour have got good policy to solve it. But to say that that people are voting for Labour because they're being racist, I think that's disingenuous.
To trying to make something of vote share, that's sort of fine. But they're trying to link it to national projections for next year. That's fairly pointless. For a start, only so many parts of the country are taking part in these elections. The dumbest comment I saw was from Hodges of the Mail, saying that the BBC have confirmed that Labour's vote share was less than in 2022. It's like, mate, it was different parts of the...
I mean, I think most, to be fair, Mummy Sasha, I do think most of my chatters are probably cisgender men at this point. My YouTube analytics certainly say so. But I do have lots of queer people in the chat, and it is, we are 100% safe space rules as far as chat is concerned. So,
the country then. In fact, last year was when that was the really strong Labour areas. I said last year, don't expect many net gains because these are the seats that Labour already had. This was the year for the big Labour gains. Labour won 2/3 of all the seats up for grabs last year. It was the major Labour heartlands. This year they'll
yeah, because yes, last year was London, wasn't it? The thing is, in last year, it wasn't the Labour heartlands Labour did well in of the local elections last year. Actually, Phil is incorrect in the Labour did really well in Conservative councils in London, places like Wandsworth, places and places like that, places which are the quote unquote the most metropolitanist, liberalist, middle classist areas in London specifically. Do you know where Labour did badly in at the last elections last year? Northern towns, right? The Brexit voting areas, for example. That's where they were losing ground before. They were happy taking the posh Tory votes away, whilst looking like the managerial party of neoliberalism. But actually, Corbyn did better in northern towns than Keir Starmer did last year. Although interesting to see that that's changed now, possibly in a post-Liz Truss world. But
happy with 1/3. 1/3 will be a triumph. It's different areas. Bloody idiot. Of course vote share is going to be lower. But this is the problem with the Tories controlling so much of the media narrative. That they will even spin the loss of hundreds of seats after 2019 as a win is remarkable.
Lonerbox with the raid on YouTube. Welcome everybody. I hope we're all doing well. Please drop a like and a subscription. That'd be much appreciated if you'd like to do that. Not a problem if you don't want to, but you can do that. And if you want to give me money, it's actually, if you want to join and become a member, it's only 99p. If there's anyone who wants to, actually, if anyone who's one of my regular viewers wants to dole out some giftarinos, some membership giftarinos, you can do that if you really want. I hate to beg for money on the internet, but you know, I've been well educated by Heem and Chud Logic on that. If you don't tell people to give you money, they won't. So yeah, and the best part about it is if you give me money, I will have more money, which is the real gain that you get from giving me money. And I hope all the Lonerbox people, you had a good stream. And again, thank you very much, Lonerbox, for the raid as well. It's always appreciated for any help.
Communist.
Hey, Garstic, SolaceWorks, thank you for the follows on Twitch. Give the raiders a chance to settle him before you throw the collection plate at them. No, money or nothing. Hey. Oh no, a gifted sub from one of the raiders from Becky's Fit. Much appreciated. Hope we're all doing well. That's why half my job as one of Kev's mods is shilling. I mean, that's true, Wayward Historian. Anyway, back to the content. That's what we're here for.
But even they can't spin the loss of 1,000. So we'll have to wait and see. But although Labour have failed to make ground in some areas, there were some where they were hoping to make gains, and there'll need to be a strong showing next year where they...
Zeoed with the bits, thank you. I mean, text-to-speech is on, so if you want to leave a message with your bits, you get your text-to-speech, you get value for your money on this channel.
Didn't. But they have captured some major scalps. Blackpool to Labour, East Staffordshire, North East Derbyshire, where a pissed up Boris Johnson was trying to assure voters that Labour weren't looking good. Swindon, which voted Leave and then destroyed their own economy because it was reliant on the car industry. They've gone Labour. I'm seeing reports that Sunak's opponents are circling. They're trying to make the point that Sunak has to own these results. Can't blame others. He's got to own them because he has been Chancellor and then Prime Minister for the last 3 years. That's his own side saying that, sort of. Oh, and if you want a...
On my strategy, yeah, like the UK is literally completely fucked. Our economy has been ruined by people by essentially 13 years of continuous mismanagement, where we went into a recession and then cut public spending, which is what you're not supposed to do, and then continue to do so for 9 years, and then the pandemic happened, and now we're going full austerity mode again, and then the next potential prime minister also says that he's going to have an iron grip on the economy. So yeah, we've been crying out for some kind of new spending regime to kickstart the economy, and no one wants to do it. So yeah, looking good. Got great things coming forward. In fact, things are so bad in the UK that young people are literally leaving the country because they can't afford to live here because rents are so high. Property is unaffordable. No one's building any houses because we're still cucked out to a lot of. There was a in the levelling up bill in Parliament. There was a potential change to planning regulation to allow it to make it easier to build houses, and that got removed because of like a handful of Conservative MPs who said they wouldn't vote for it. So the Conservative Party pulled the legislation. This is the Theresa Villiers amendment, which essentially was to not just remove the change to planning restrictions, but also to remove house building targets, which is now being fully throated supported by the Conservative leadership. So houses are unaffordable for buyers and renters. Young people cannot afford to live, and so they're all just they're leaving. They're fleeing the country. They literally cannot afford to be here anymore, so they're just leaving completely. They're just getting up, going, and moving to another country. It's wild. And if all the young people leave, where's the productivity going to go? Where's all of the economic gains going to go? Who's going to pay for old people's pensions? This is unless serious, gigantic, actually post-war level change happens on the economy. This is a death spiral that is unsolvable. Where do you run to? Any European country, Germany, France, Spain, Portugal, just not Italy. I would advise against Italy or Greece maybe, which is a shame because I like Greece, but good food. All that money they spend to get skills imported, and now they're watching it walk out the door for a want of sufficient houses. We had this we're going to have a huge brain drain crisis on our hands as soon as Gen Zers become rich enough to be able to afford a visa to move to a different country.
Really big talking point. A couple of very tasty results. Bracknell Forest. I talked about this one in last week's stream. I said, if you're interested in tactical voting, tactical politics, watch Bracknell Forest, Berkshire. There was a suggestion that there was a progressive alliance of sorts, a bit of a pact, or at the very least a non-aggression pact. In 12 of the 15 wards up for grabs.
I don't think they're that smart, Donny Marco. I don't think that they explicitly wanted to remove freedom of movement to stop brain drain. It was all about trying to persuade the anti-immigrant population not to leave. A gifted sub from Anonymous. Thank you very much. Newman Noggs, you are the proud owner of a gifted sub on Twitch. Thank you. They're going to be poorer than Poland by 2030. Yep, I mean, not surprising. Because freedom of movement was just was a real issue for huge swathes of the country. Like the one thing that Matt Goodwin is correct about is that the entire political class are not in any way close to where our population is on immigration as a specific policy. But that's not changing anytime soon because immigration is necessary for economic growth, because we're not getting the population growth, because our birth rate is about to drop below replacement levels. So immigration is necessary for economic growth. And they can't have it both ways, right? The racists who want to see fewer brown faces, or the working people who've been lied to about the effect of immigration on wages rather than, union density, supply-side labour market policy from the government. That's what the anti-immigration stuff really is, right? There was I don't know if anyone saw a debate between Mick Wright and Matt Goodwin on Politics Joe, but Matt Goodwin was talking about what I was talking about there, about how the Conservatives and the Labour Party have used cheap immigrant labour as a way of being able to boost economic growth easily without changing the macroeconomic picture of the country's economy. And Mick Wright was spending all this time going, well, actually, no, it's good if we, I think that immigrants do good things because I was treated by a cardiologist who was from Nigeria or whatever. That solves nobody's issue, right? The real problem with, the real problem is that the increase in immigration numbers has coincided with, as I said, supply side labour market policy, the decline in union density, financial capital moving overseas because of poor economic performance, for example. And that's what's led to the depression in wages, which just happens to coincide with a high migration issue, right? If you compare the UK with Germany, right? Germany has higher immigration per capita, the same increase in productivity and the same increase in GDP, but with an increase in productivity. And despite them having more immigration than us, their wages have kept up with GDP growth, whereas ours haven't. And that's because the CDU is not so stupid as to depress their own workers' wages for the sake of neoliberal goons. Also, it does help that workers are on corporate boards in Germany, and they've seen the increase in GDP as a result of the immigration they've had over the past few years. That has translated into wages growing for everybody. Whereas here wages have stayed stagnant. We're £11,000 per person on average behind where wages should be if trends had continued before 2010. That growth is still there. That what meagre growth we do have in the wake of austerity is there, but it's all gone to the 1%, and that's been pumped into asset prices. That's been pumped into the cost of housing. That's been pumped in the cost of stocks and shares, and that's why the people who got rich off of the sell-off of council houses under Right to Buy in the 80s. That's why they keep voting Conservatives. Why they voted Conservative for David Cameron in 2015, because their main property equity is spiraling in value because they don't have to worry about their wages being depressed. This is why the split is between the old and the young, because pensioners don't have to worry about wage depression because they've had the triple lock. That's been a continuous policy by the government to keep middle-class retiree people on side, election after election, because the supply-side labour market policies that they've done to suppress wages as an inflationary control, despite the fact all of the quantitative easing that they've pumped into the system, which should theoretically be inflationary, that's been tempered by their policies on labour market policies, their monetary policy that has depressed wages for 13 years. That's how they've managed to take loads of new money and pump it into rich people to increase asset prices. So the immigration stuff is a real smokescreen for anti-worker policy from the government. Isn't rent insane in Ireland right now? It's just as bad. It's worse here. It's worse in Ireland than it is here. They're having the same brain drain issues where young people are just up and leaving the country. And why I'm based and Sinn Féin pilled and looking forward to Sinn Féin becoming the majority party, or at least the plurality party in the Dáil come 2025. What you don't understand is that after Brexit, we still have strong voices for leaving the European Union. I mean, literally, it's almost close to a supermajority who back Remain now. I think Europe Elect were posting the data on it. Let me find it. Let me go back to Europe Elect. That's the one. Look at this poll here from Omnisis, showing that it was 63% support rejoin. We're like 4% away from a supermajority. That's crazy numbers supporting rejoining the European Union. But this is not a result of Brexit being this singular issue to which rejoining the EU would be some kind of panacea for. This is a result of the failures of the ERG and the incredibly one-sided way in which that we have tried to the one-sided way that the ERG tried to push the hardest of hard Brexits, rather than a proper, mitigated, compromise position on EFTA or the single market or the customs union. And because they got the hard Brexit that they wanted and campaigned for, that's fucked the economy in a way that Brexit might not have done if we had sensible policy prescriptions going into it. What's Sinn Féin about? They are the Irish Republican Party. So they are a leftist party, an anti-imperialist party that formed in the wake of the Irish Free State being created. I believe that's when they first became a party. There's been a bunch of different party splits, but as far as Sinn Féin are concerned now, they are a progressive, leftist, anti-imperialist party that has historic links to the Irish Republican Army. And at the moment, their opposition in the Irish Dáil is Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, who are both neoliberal centre-right parties who tend to swap ownership of the parliament election after election, but they're currently in coalition because their vote has dropped so much that even after being in coalition, their vote is so low, their combined vote share is lower than Sinn Féin. So it looks like Sinn Féin will form the next government in the Dáil if polling stays as it is at the moment, followed by in some kind of coalition with the Social Democrats, the Labour Party, People Before Profit as well, possibly will get on there as well, with some support from some independents. But the days of FFFG are gone in Ireland right now. Are Sinn Féin leftist or anti-colonial? They are call themselves democratic socialists.
There was only one of those parties represented. They were denying it, but it was clearly looking like they didn't want to tread on each other's toes. And this proper Tory council, proper Tory. Oh, almost every seat was Tory. Not anymore. It's a Labour council now. Labour went from 4 councillors to 22. 4 to 22. That's actually a bit of a worry, because you actually wonder, are they going to be able to run the council? Because they've suddenly got a massive influx of councillors. But from 4 to 22. The Lib Dems go from none to 7. Greens from none to 2. The Tories went from 37 to 10. Boom. Huge result for tactical politics. Huge. And if you want some spice on those chips, Middlesbrough too. Let's look at Middlesbrough. The scene of some very dodgy going on in relation to the Brexit free ports there. Some of you may have seen it in the news. Had a Tory mayor who seemed to be covering for a few things. He's got a Labour mayor now. There was no overall control of the council, although it was, heavily Labour. But now Labour do have control.
I don't think they're similar to Enhedlisten, Andreas. I think that there is actually a green eco-socialist party in. Oh no, actually no, these are like proper Marxists though, aren't they? Actually, so maybe they are pretty close. Yeah, they probably are pretty close to the Red-Green Alliance as far as political policy is concerned. But obviously their main position is obviously Irish republicanism, so wanting to unite North and Republic of Ireland to regain the 6 counties, as it were. But they're not affiliated to the trade unions, which is what the Labour Party are in Ireland. Anyone thinking Starmer is going to make any meaningful changes fooling themselves? They needed the SNP to hold them to account, but that boat might have sailed. Well, literally, they're at the point where Douglas Ross, the Conservative leader in Scotland, is telling Tories to tactically vote for the Labour Party to stop the SNP, which is an unreal position to think you'd be in, which just shows you how close on policy together Labour and Conservatives really are.
I think there may be some opening of the books on the Freeport dealings quite soon. What do you think? That could be interesting. And at this point, there are still lots of seats to declare, but I have to say, the overall results look very bad for the Tories and very good for the progressive parties. But there are some cracking individual stories as well. But we can catch up with even more in the stream tomorrow. Check out the homepage for that. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.
You like this result because it's murder for the Tories but not a resounding endorsement of Labour? 100% Scouse Roll. You're absolutely... That's exactly what I was saying at the start of the stream. This is the perfect result for the left. The perfect result for the left. In that Labour do good. Okay, but fine, good. Gaining councillors, unseating Tories. The Tories have done abysmally poorly. Like worse than what Greg Hands called their worst possible result on Sky News last weekend. So they are a genuine nightmare result for the Conservative Party. But yet, Greens doing well, Liverpool Community Independents doing well, ex-Labour councillors being kicked out for being too left-wing, they're doing well. So this is the left ascendancy. These local elections are like, it's good for everybody who's even nominally progressive. In that the Tories are doing badly, Labour are doing good, but there's not like a full-throated support of Starmer's platform and his positions. And then the genuinely progressive party, which is the Greens, and then the Independents who are to the left of Labour, also all doing well as well. No, Moisashi, good to have you on stream, and thank you very much for gifting the sub. Much appreciated. I will catch you on the next one. Theoretically, maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll see you. I don't know. I'll possibly see you in future. But thank you very much for joining in and for your constructive comments and additions to the chat. I'll see you later. It's as if voters have started paying attention. I mean, definitely. A murder of Tories, their collective term. True. A social murder of Tories. Ayo. Also, I guess what another thing that happened, right? Another thing that happened in these elections. So I don't know if people watched the segment that I put up on YouTube. Talking about there was this tactical voting website called StopTheTories.vote, which was trying to get people. It was doing silly things, for example, like trying to get people to vote Liberal Democrat where they shouldn't do, not telling people to vote Green when they should do, because it's run by a guy called John Mortar, who I've joked about on the stream before. The guy who ran the Rage Against the Machine for #1 campaign, who got involved with a cunt of the gang too. But anyway, regardless. They put up this photo website where you enter your constituency and it tells you what to vote for in your ward, their recommended vote. And I mocked this tactical voting website for telling people to make the wrong voter calls. And I was right. In the specific ward that I brought up on stream about them getting wrong about how you should vote for, they caused people to vote split for the wrong party. So in this particular constituency, that's a bit large, but whatever, they told you to vote for the Liberal Democrats. And look what fucking happened. There was a vote split that meant that 2 Tory councillors got elected. I literally called it on stream as well. The last result, Allsworth, Cossell and Trowell want you to vote for the Liberal Democrats, right? You actually look at the last result, the Liberal Democrats finished in second and were like 30 votes ahead of Labour. So it wasn't obviously a huge difference in vote. But what they wanted you to do was vote for the Liberal Democrats because they came in second. And say, well, if they're in second, it seems reasonable to want to vote for them to be able to take care of the Tories. But that doesn't take into account the fact that the Tories are way down and the Labour Party are way up in the polls, right? And their vote increase compared to the Liberal Democrat vote increase actually means that if I was looking at this, I would think the Labour Party would actually have a better chance of beating the Conservatives in this particular constituency, because the rate at which Labour are gaining votes is quicker than the vote the Liberal Democrats are gaining votes. So by using this website in a time at which people who aren't engaged with the tactical voting style stuff are now voting for the Labour Party instead of the Conservative Party, you're actually doing more vote splitting by following this website than you would be if you just voted for the candidate that you wanted. For example, you look in 2015, there was Allsworth, Cossell and Trowell want you to vote for the Liberal Democrats, right? You actually look at the last result, and it turns out I was absolutely right. This is literally what happened. Great job, John. Well done. Excellent work. Brilliant. We'll have to see it. What we don't have yet are 2 things. The Northern Irish council elections are on the 18th, so we've got to wait to see how well Sinn Féin are going to do. And then second of all is we need to get the numbers on voter suppression, because with the voter ID, there's a big drop in turnout. There are some stories, I think, like Byline Times put some stuff together on this kind of thing. Let me have a look. Dozens of voters affected by mandatory photo ID. People don't have passport to be able to vote. It seems like some anecdotes, really, so it's not really any actual... doesn't look like that's actual data. But the Electoral Commission are going to be collecting data. They'll be putting out a report on how voter ID will have affected turnout. So it'll be interesting to see... it'll be really interesting to see whether or not that there has been a large, substantial effect in drop in turnout because of it. So, we shall see. We shall see. Dozens times 1,000 maybe. What's voter ID about? For this local election, it's the first time where we've had voter ID in a UK election. Sorry, so you have to show a photo ID to be able to vote. Now, if you're an old person, like, you can use your passport, your driving license, your old person's bus pass, your senior citizen card, whatever it might be, for example. But if you're young, you don't get any of that. It's passport, driving license, or nothing else. Or you can get provisional ID from the government if you apply for it before a certain date, before the elections were behind. So loads of people got turned away at the election for not having ID, based upon the idea that it would stop voter fraud, which never happens anyway. So it's explicitly voter suppression, because they know that left-wing voters are more young voters are more likely to vote left-wing and less likely to have the requisite ID, and also less likely to go out of their way to find ID or get the provisional ID from the government to be able to go out and vote, because they care less. Whereas old people have more things they can use for ID, more likely to vote Conservative, and also are more likely to put in the effort to be able to do a postal vote or to get the government-provided separate ID thing. And they had greeters turning people away for not having the ID in the first place, who then might not have been recorded in the numbers, so we'll never actually know the full extent of whether or not voter ID was an issue, but... A solution in search for a problem, yeah, very true, very true. Voter fraud is not a major concern rather than it happens. Yes, that's a better way of putting it, ZOJM. Oh, 100, I mean... I would think it factors of 10 more people turned away for no ID than people there was some discrepancy in other voter things, or there was cases of theoretical voter fraud. Isn't that something that happens a ton in America? What, voter fraud or voter suppression? Because, yeah, the voter suppression does happen in America.
I'm literally a communist.
Sam24W, thank you for the follow on Twitch. Welcome to the No Justice stream. I hope you're doing well. So we shall see. I'm not sure what's going to happen about whether voter ID is going to affect the voting or not. Right, let's watch Nick Ferrari, of all people, dig into the Tories.
Come along, mister. You and I have known each other long enough, please.
We have.
Mr. Chairman, as we come to the end of the football season, the Conservatives are firm.
I was the very first person to vote. I was there at 7 a.m. yesterday to stand in line to vote, mostly because I'd stayed up all night and I had nothing else to do.
In the drop zone, you've been relegated. Why? Good morning.
Well, look, it's been a disappointing night for us, and we all said that it was likely to be so. And, you know, we've lost good council leaders, councillors, so it's been a difficult night for us overall.
But what do you put it down to?
Well, look, I think in many cases it's local factors. In many cases it's a classic sort of midterm government unpopularity. Clearly last year was a very difficult year for the whole country, for the whole party. After Putin's invasion of Ukraine, the spike in energy prices, the big rise in inflation, people are still dealing with the consequences of that. What I am clear about, though, is that we've lost some good councillors.
Mr. Hans, you're surely not blaming Vladimir Putin for losing control of Medway Council after 23 years.
Well, I'm saying the backdrop to these...
I love calling him Mr. Hans. I'm not sure if that's just a funny... That just sounds funny to me.
Elections has not been the best.
Would that be everyone on strike? Nurses, teachers, picket lines? Do you think that plays a role, Mr. Hans?
Well, that's, again, driven by the higher inflation. That's one of the reasons why Rishi Sunak and the whole government are getting on with delivering on what we call the 5 priorities, which are halving inflation, restoring growth, cutting the debt, reducing hospital waiting lists, and stopping the boats. You know, those are our priorities. Those are what I think the people's priorities are.
Again, you've heard that. How many times have you heard that line, chat?
That is what we will crack on with delivering.
If you acknowledge, as I'm sure you do as chairman, that the starting point was the historic low bar of the situation of 2019, how is it possible to have sunk even lower?
Well, that isn't. I disagree with the premise in your question. The Conservatives were the largest party of local government going into these elections. There were
Your
more
leader
Conservative
quit.
seats.
They were so bad. Your leader quit.
There were more Conservative seats up last night than Labour and Lib Dem seats put together. So clearly the Conservatives had more to lose. What I would say, if I might, Nick, is that Labour under Sir Keir Starmer aren't showing the comprehensive sort of breakthrough that you and I would remember from Tony Blair in 1995. You know, Labour.
But they're coming off of good results in 2019. The last times these wards were polled, Greg.
Seriously seeking to deflect the situation in which you'll find yourself by saying Labour are having a bad night, are you, Mr. Hands?
Well, I'm saying that Labour aren't winning in the sort of places that they need to be winning in, Nick. Like, for example, the Conservatives have gained seats in Peterborough, gained seats in Sandwell,
and lost
gained
Medway,
seats in Bassetlaw,
and lost Windsor. Come along, Mr. You and I have known each other long enough, please.
We have, but I'm giving examples of seats that Jeremy Corbyn won in 2017. Jeremy Corbyn won Peterborough.
Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn
won West Bromwich. Jeremy Corbyn won Bassetlaw. And Sir Keir Starmer is not winning those places back. The Conservatives gained seats in all three of those councils last night. So I'm saying, of course, it's a disappointing night for the Conservatives, but I'm also saying it's not a clear-cut win for Sir Keir Starmer and Labour. Well, in 1995, the year before that, a general election that you and I remember well, the Conservatives lost 1,900 seats. Labour gained 1,600 seats. I don't think we'll see anything like that from yesterday's results.
But it is true that Labour did really well in those 2019 elections. It's almost like Jeremy Corbyn was more liked by the public than Theresa May was.
Chairman of the party, it falls to you now to help rally, and I imagine you regret you've probably lost a lot of very good men and women up and down the country who served as councillors. What will your message be to your party faithful, and what have you already discussed with the Prime Minister?
Well, I haven't spoken to the Prime Minister yet this morning. The Prime Minister's been at Conservative headquarters while I've been on this.
All right, Forza Ferrari 555. Hope you're doing well.
Programme. I'll be saying to the party faithful, it's been a disappointing night. We've lost some really good councillors and really good, well-run councils, but nonetheless, we need to get on with delivering on the priorities of the people. That is what Rishi Sunak is doing, delivering on those 5 priorities of halving inflation, restoring growth, cutting the debt, reducing hospital waiting lists, stopping the boats. Those are the government's 5 priorities. Those are the people's 5 priorities.
You've said that's the second time you've said that in this one interview, Greg.
If we drill down to some of the local matters here, it's possible that many people voted yesterday because they were crying out for the building of more housing. Now, of course, your party did scrap housing targets. Might this make you reconsider that decision?
Well, there's no immediate need to change government policy on housing. What I am clear on, we are delivering more homes. We've delivered 2.3 million new homes since 2010. The last 2 years have seen a real uptick in house building.
That's below target.
So we are delivering homes. We need to be delivering more homes. And that is what the people want us to do. But
why did you scrap
often,
the targets then, Mr. Hands?
Well, because I think the targets, need to have a degree of local consent and local involvement.
So much cope. 300,000 zeroed.
We need to do things like protect the green belt. All of that can be consistent with delivering more homes. We're delivering more homes, 2.3 million new homes since 2010. House building really getting a strong uptick the last couple of years.
If you are looking at a loss of more than 1,000...
It's ironic seeing that most of the new houses that have been built recently in this uptick that he's talking about have been in London under the proviso of Sadiq Khan and not by Westminster.
Seats. How would you reflect on yesterday and last night?
Well, I don't have a specific forecast for you, Nick, and only a quarter of the results have come in. I am quite clear from the early results that it's been a difficult night for the Conservatives, and we will have to reflect on that. Often those are down to local factors, local issues. clearly some of our gains last night were down to local factors, local issues. Some really good MPs we've got out there who've seen gains in their area, like Paul Bristow in Peterborough, Sean Bailey in West Bromwich, Brendan Clark-Smith in Bassetlaw, Robert Halfon in Harlow. You know, these are all areas where we've got really good campaigning MPs and great groups of councillors as well.
I mean, to be fair, we can rag on him for all of this cope, but he's got to say something, right? He can't just come out there and said, "Yeah, we suck. Our policies suck. No one was going to vote for us." Blah blah blah. He can't say anything other than try and find something. So I'm not going to rag on him too much.
Do you respond to the projection from the BBC that your party's national share could fall below 25%, which would be the worst local election result for the Conservatives in more than 40 years?
Well, look, I think
I know you're going to say it's not in, but currently we are headed towards that, Mr. Chairman.
Well, look, I'm being quite frank with you, Nick, that it's not been an easy night for us. It's been a disappointing night. But I am saying that within that, I don't think it's been if you like, a really knockout performance from Labour either. You know, they're not doing well in some of the areas they need to gain to be back in government. So I think on that basis, it's going to be all to play for. We're going to carry on delivering on those 5 priorities, delivering for the people.
Lastly, you could say that the last election, general election, the main feature was the red wall and the successes your party enjoyed. The reality now is that your very own blue wall is under threat, isn't it? If the swing to the Lib Dems were to be continued, some of your senior colleagues, such as Dominic Raab, Michael Gove, possibly even the Chancellor of the Exchequer, they're under threat from the Lib Dems, aren't you? You're now defending the blue wall.
Well, look, we take defending our Conservative councils and Conservative MPs up and down the country with the utmost seriousness. We haven't seen a breakthrough for the Lib Dems in the national opinion polls.
They've just taken Windsor, Mr. Hands. That is a
that is a regrettable situation for us. I think Andy Johnson, our leader in Windsor, has been a good council leader. We've lost good councillors. Yeah. But I don't think we're seeing a breakthrough for the Lib Dems on the national stage either.
But it's a hop,
skip. And also, the thing is, what's interesting, right, is that obviously the biggest cause for inflation is the issue because of the war in Ukraine. I'm not denying. No one should deny that there is at least some truth in a lot of their poor polling, as well as because of the trust budget, is down to the issues with the spike in energy prices because of the war in Ukraine. But that's a policy that's been exacerbated by failures on energy policy by every government for 45 years. Every government could have fixed our reliance on gas. They never did. They never bothered, and everyone is to blame for that. But the Conservatives were in power at the time of the energy price spike, so that's tough shit. When people are going to vote against you, right? When you've done nothing really to help other than engage in huge amounts of quantitative easing, to pump huge amounts of money to prop up the profits of Shell and BP. That stings, right? They could have properly done this in a way that benefited people rather than executives of petrochemical industry giants. But they didn't do that. And so they are paying the electoral price for it.
A jump or indeed a train ride from Windsor down to constituencies in Surrey, constituencies such as those as Dominic Raab, Michael Gove. I put to you again, those big beasts of the Tory party, they are having to defend now
again, I hate to paraphrase somebody who I really dislike, but it is indeed the economy, stupid. It is the economy. And they failed on the economy, and they have failed on the economy for 13 years.
Blue wall. You could lose some big names in 12, 16, 18, 20 months' time.
Well, look, I mean, these are all seats that we are fighting hard to win, fighting hard to retain. These are all going to be, Nick, important battlegrounds in next year's general election. The whole country will be an important battleground in next year's general election. That's why we're fighting hard. I've been across some of those seats during the course of this campaign. I've got some really, really good quality Conservative councillors like John Hope, who in Elmbridge Council, really, really good, high-quality Conservative group leader, some great councillors. Will be fighting really hard there over the course of the next year.
Lastly, I know many of your senior colleagues were out campaigning to do as well as they could for the local elections. Where was Boris Johnson?
That's a question better put to Boris. I've always been clear with Boris that he is welcome to be out campaigning with us, back out there. He is a campaigning force. And
did you ask him? Did you want him as part of your Blue Army?
Nick, there's something. Boris, I have a number of conversations with Boris. I've known him for.
Yeah, Ferrari's a bell end, but you know, and Ferrari's continual insistence on asking every single Labour politician whether a woman has a penis is incredibly grating.
30 years, and I'm expecting him to be back out on the campaign trail, not least in his.
Again, I mentioned this on Wednesday's stream. I just want more reporters, more people questioning politicians, to use the singular phrase that stops them dead in their tracks, which is, "Do you think my viewers are stupid?" Right? When they go on all this bluster and all these lies, all these misdirections, go, no, my viewers are not stupid. Stop treating them like they're idiots. Where's 30p Lee hiding? Interesting, yeah, we shall see. Apparently 30p Lee too scared to come out. It's almost like they realise that the culture war stuff isn't good enough to win.
His own constituency of Uxbridge and South Ruislip. He's been there campaigning against ULEZ, which you know is a big feature of the London
he declined to be part of the Blue Army for these local elections, did he? Chairman?
Well, he's been campaigning hard against ULEZ, and that's an important thing against Sadiq Khan's misconceived ULEZ expansion, which I think will have a big negative impact on many of his voters in Uxbridge.
And you're speaking as, of course, a Conservative MP for Chelsea and Fulham on that point. Thank you. You're Chairman of the Conservative Party, Greg Hands. Thank you for your time.
Regardless of what the other vehicles...
I don't think many members of the public are genuinely stupid, but this election came at a bad time for Boris. He should be free to participate sometime in 2025. True. I mean, if you're viewing radio, you probably has something wrong with you. I mean, they broadcast this stuff live on Global Play. They have their own website where they broadcast the actual video feed as well as it being video clips they put on YouTube later. And also sometimes they actually stream live. They actually stream live on YouTube as well. Yeah, they actually have like live streams with like panel shows as well as it being on the radio to listen to as well. Actually, there was one last thing I was going to watch about the local elections, which is just Sky News' summary, see what they have to say.
Early morning in Medway, jubilation. A sign of things to come, Labour taking this Kent council for the first time. This historic win just the start, and this man overjoyed. Today promising a new chapter.
Make no mistake, we are on course for a Labour majority at the next general election.
That's his hope, and progress across swathes of southern England crucial to hitting it. Swindon, another to switch. Key marginal territory taken, sending a message to the Conservatives.
No, Boris Johnson is not popular anymore in the UK.
Change could be coming.
Unfortunately, national issues just seem to have overwhelmed the whole situation, and hence we've got the results we've got.
A brave face for the PM, arriving at party headquarters armed with sandwiches for staffers. But this, very bad, and he knows it.
It's always disappointing to lose hard-working Conservative councillors, their friends, their colleagues, and I'm so grateful to them for everything that they've done.
But as the day progressed and counting continued, the results for the Conservatives fell further. Dover in Kent, once a true Brexit battleground, now moving behind Labour.
These are local elections, but these are a fantastic set of results for us. The spread of our victories overnight and into today shows actually that we are making gains in the areas that we need to be winning for that next general election.
Into the West Midlands and pockets of the north of England, further Starmer success. Stoke-on-Trent reclaimed, a brick back in the red wall. But a long way to go. The Conservatives still with a foothold in Boris Johnson Brexit land, holding ground in Walsall, Dudley and Stockton too. For both sides, winning here, crucial to deliver a general election victory.
Liberal Democrats, 1,001.
But any prospect of that for the Conservatives today dashed.
Nationally, we haven't been helped. I think there's been difficulties, and I think the party needs to reflect on some of the losses that we've had.
From Berkshire to Bath, Devon to Dacorum, Surrey to Stratford-on-Avon, safe southern heartland smashed. Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davies celebrating in Windsor and Maidenhead, a once true blue borough.
3, 2, 1.
Is there anything more cringe than a Liberal Democrat, than like a Liberal Democrat fucking prop? God, there's no one more cringe than the Liberal Democrats in UK politics.
Now calling time on Tory rule.
I've been saying for a long time now the Liberal Democrats are the challengers to the Conservatives across the blue wall seats in the south of England and actually in a few other places too.
Millions of votes counted, the results are in, and these local elections suggest that Sir Keir Starmer is on course to become the next Prime Minister. It's an incredible achievement for...
Do you know what to mention? The Greens, maybe, Beth? Well, the Greens had their best result at any set of elections ever. Why are you ignoring the Green Party, Beth?
The Labour leader. But he still has a mountain to climb if he wants to win an outright majority, because these results suggest that we're heading for a hung parliament with Labour the largest party.
I think that's wrong.
Are you facing a wipeout, Prime Minister?
The results speak for themselves. This a disaster.
Do you reckon you'll be able to turn this around?
But the Prime Minister finding comfort in greeting foreign leaders at number 10. The coronation a welcome distraction from his domestic woes, but nothing to celebrate for him here. Beth Rigby, Sky News in Westminster.
What I do find weird, Andreas, is I do find it weird that somehow liberal parties have some kind of popular front that everyone supports them in mainland Europe, and I just don't get it. Who has a full-throated belief in like centrism? Like, it's so weird to me that there's like a genuine popular movement in support of liberal like centrism. Doesn't make any sense to me, but hey ho. Well, to be fair, in Denmark, the Social Democratic Party are way up in the polls. Actually, the Danish Social Democrats, they seem to be the only party in the entirety of Europe that were incumbents after the pandemic and then stayed in power. Obviously, their leader resigned as soon as getting into power, which is weird, but even so, it is incredibly heartwarming to know that Social Democrats can be in power during the pandemic and then stay in power after the pandemic. Because it looks like the Tories losing after the pandemic, the coalition in Sweden losing after the pandemic, the Arbeiderpartiet in Norway losing after the pandemic, PSOE, PD rather in Italy. Macron looks like he's on his way out. It's really strange. I mean, good. I'm glad Social Democrats are doing well in Denmark, which is good to see. The Ed Stone puts the little clock to shame for stupid points. I mean, definitely. That's definitely correct. The Ed Stone is the absolute pinnacle of embarrassing UK political moments. YouTube viewers, I am going to be finishing on YouTube now, as I am watching the forbidden content. But I'll be watching the forbidden content on Twitch. So if you'd like to continue watching, I've just posted the link to my Twitch channel in the chat, where you can continue watching me watch the forbidden content if you want to. If not, I'm going to be raiding out. If you want to drop a subscription, it's free to subscribe on Twitch. If you'd like to, that'd be great. You can indeed, again, it's essentially following me on YouTube. If you want to become a subscriber, that'd be great if you can. If not, hopefully I'll see you on another live stream. But otherwise, I'll be continuing this stream only on Twitch. And if not, do you want to come and watch Question Time with us? I'll see you probably streaming. I'll be streaming all day tomorrow with an alternative coronation stream. Should be pretty fun. But I will catch you then. Cheers.